Right. A lot of excitement in the air. All right, welcome everyone to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. We're going to begin our work session a little early tonight. We have a special guest. Our new URI president, Mark Palange, is here to introduce himself and sort of reignite the conversation that has been ongoing, town and gown, over the years. It's great to welcome you here and meet you. We've all been given a sort of a bullet point list of some of the things that we've cooperated together on over the years, and we look forward to doing a lot more together, of course. But if you want to start off, Mark, just by introducing yourself, that would be great. Yes, and if possible, bring that microphone close to your mouth.
Does it now work? It's now a red.
If it's got a red light on it, that should mean it's on.
Okay, it's all good. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks. I first of all want to say it's very nice to meet you all this evening, and I'm happy to be invited here. So I a little bit maybe about background and first impressions. So we arrived a little over 3 months ago, so we started on August 1 as president, and so I'm a bit of a team. My wife, Mary, also is also thrilled to be here at the University of Rhode Island. So a little bit about first impressions. First of all, it's a great university. It is doing a lot of marvelous things on multiple fronts, and I feel that quite strongly the way that the University of Rhode Island will go and progress in the future will have a big impact on how the state of Rhode Island is going to go. I think we play a very important role, obviously, with lifting up the community, creating opportunities for our students to have, go on and have great careers. But I think we also do, a lot of very, very important research that is going to impact the state of Rhode Island. So, in many ways, the future of Rhode Island is blue, and obviously research and outreach and work in the area of the blue economy becomes very important. And so broadly, there's a lot going on spanning from obviously coastal wind farms to underwater vehicle technology to protecting our shorelines. And certainly I would like to warmly welcome you to, we have every Tuesday night at 7 or 7:30 in Edwards Hall, we have a very nice colloquium on sustaining our shores. And so that's really a nice community gathering, and we've had great speakers. But there are a lot of important issues that, as a society we're facing, and I think the university in many ways is doing that well. We like to do things in partnership. We like to work with our friends, and so there's a lot going on, obviously, with neighboring universities, the University of Connecticut, University of Massachusetts, Woods Hole. But it's very important, our relationship, obviously, with the various state government agencies, clearly the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the Governor. So I had the pleasure to meet these folks, and they're very enthusiastic about supporting the university. So that's great. And so it's for me, it's just been great to be here. Maybe some first impressions. One thing that you notice right away is that the students, the faculty, and staff who work at the university very enthusiastic about being at the university. There's a very positive feel that I've been at a number of universities, but this here you can see there's a lot of pride in being at the university. This year, of course, we're coming off COVID. We were concerned this year. We if you go to our webpage, you'll notice right at the top we report very clearly all our COVID numbers and statistics. And so far, it's been going well. We've generally had a positivity rate in terms of our testing of less than 0.4%. We have I think we've been very careful. We mandated early on that students and faculty and staff, and now classified staff, will all be vaccinated. We still, of course, wear masks indoors, except for maybe presentations like this on this occasion, as we can practice some social distancing. Just a little bit of some of the things, you arrive in August, so you spend a lot of time starting to learn about the sports programs of the university, and just the community of student athletes, coaches, trainers. And it's just it's a lovely connections and groups. As the semester kicked off, there's a lot of good research going on with our farms that are of course, in South Kingston and in the area, and that's very important. And students have been great at inviting me. And so, if you want to see interesting projects, you can go to East Farm and visit with the people raising bees. We discovered the American bumblebee in Rhode Island, which is very important, first time in 7 years. So there's interesting work there, and of course down on the agronomy farm, very interesting work on vegetables and fruits that are going on. And I liked it that it's both faculty and students inviting me. There's just fantastic things, and you can go across the board. I've had the pleasure of learning about our nursing program, by the way, best in New England, with apologies if you went to Yale or Boston College or those other schools, but we're very good there. We have a great pharmacy program. Our engineering is really taking off, and I'd like to remind that half of our, the employees at, for example, at Electric Boat are URI graduates. So again, coming back to that first point I was trying to make about where URI goes, really does influence. And so we're really trying to work on thinking about how we attract the next Rhode Islanders. Maybe I should have gone all the way back to the beginning when I am a Rhode Islander. I was born in Providence, so 59 plus years ago, but it was, so it's also great to be home from that point of view. But, just there's a lot of good things going on. And finally, I really welcome the invitation here tonight and to talk about connections and how we can continue to build those connections. It's important we think about the place where we are and where we're going. And so there's many communities that I'm slowly getting to know, and through fun things like, for example, the Kingston Chamber, Music Festival. That was a lot of fun right at the beginning of August. To a number of other organizations. So I'm happy to take, I don't know how you would like to run it, but happy to take questions or comments, or I can give more first impressions.
Thank you, President Pralange. Questions from council members?
I just want to say thank you for your leadership regarding the library and the parking. A great collaboration between URI and the library really happened, and I know a lot of staff and town staff worked together to come up with. I appreciate all that you did, and hopefully going forward we can continue to maintain that positive relationship.
Yes. Well, thank you for those kind words, and of course one can always reach out to. So we're brand new. Carlos is a URI graduate, but so Carlos and Lauren Burgess, who's also just recently joined, are helping with government relations. There's obviously very important local and state relations that Carlos has been helping, and then we're also looking at relations at the federal level, and obviously we have some fantastic senators in Congress.
We do.
So, but yes, of course, and I love libraries. I'm always friends with the librarians at every university I've been. Some of them have been particularly close in different ways, and so, well, thank you.
Well, we all thank you for that.
Thank you. Other questions from council members or comments?
So I just would like to welcome you to the community. Thank you for coming this evening. I don't know if you're aware of how many places the town of South Kingstown and the University of Rhode Island collaborate, but we do in a number of ways, and we would. Part of our goals and objectives as a council is to expand a little bit on that. So I would look forward to the spring when we can sit down and have a lengthy discussion about how we can expand and how we can, contribute to each other's success. The town and gown relationship is very important here, and I look forward to continuing that relationship with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those comments, and certainly, it was for me. I didn't want to brag too much, but I was very happy with the different efforts that our students in pharmacy and in nursing and in other colleges have been acting, and also, some of the projects with the USDA and so forth. I think that's all extremely important. I think it's important. We are located in a very pretty part of the state of Rhode Island. There's one thing that I feel very quickly, and I felt it on the first weekend when I went to the farmers market, was immediately just the appreciation of the local farming community, the opportunity to make connections. I'm very interested in questions around sustainability, food, water, energy, where we are going forward, and so we're thinking about it actually for the winter and spring to start to have a little bit more connection there where we could gather around food. So it was actually the farmers who raised interesting ideas about thinking about farm to table, and obviously we're quite keen coming back to the blue economy about aquaculture and where that might go in the future, and so that's very important for the region. So with pleasure, happy to expand those connections.
Thank you.
Great, and I don't mean to rush you at all along, but we do have a whole agenda to get to, so we'll have time for maybe a couple more minutes of a discussion if there aren't final comments.
Just say congratulations on your new role, and I agree with Deb Kelso. A big goal for us is continuing the collaboration with the university. You guys have a huge effect on the state, but also a huge effect on South Kingstown because it's right here in this town. Whatever we can do to help you be successful, we will do, and we hope that you can do the same for us. So we hope to make this relationship strong, and it's great to meet you, and we hope to continue to be working together.
Yeah, no, thank you. Looking forward, and please, if we see each other out on the bike path, I see some of you regularly on the bike path, so I usually just wave, but and you wave nicely back, so that's great. But also, if you come, to our, it's a bit the end of soccer season at the moment, but the men and women's soccer games outdoors were a lot of fun, and I really appreciated that the community came out to support those particular teams. The women's volleyball is doing great. We could use support this coming weekend. Very important game against Fordham. If we win, then we go to the tournament. So we'd like that, and of course, we look forward to seeing you in men and women's basketball. So starting tomorrow night. So it's good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming in. And Rhode Island is a very small world. South Kingstown even smaller. I'm sure we'll be running into you all over the place.
I learned on the very first day I met somebody in the morning, and then that afternoon I was walking on the beach, and he had just moved back from Boston. So anyway, I saw somebody with a little insignia from a high school. I said, "Oh, I just met somebody." Anyway, it was his mom. So it was. So it is a small world, and it's great. And yeah, no. As it turns out, in South Kingston, there are people living here that held me when I was a baby 59 years ago, and they've retired. So it's nice to come home.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. Wonderful. Thank you. Good night. All right, we have a few interviews tonight. Let me see if I can find them. All right, for the Route 138 Reconstruction Project Area Committee, we have reappointments and to consider. So Miss Axelrod, is she? There she is. Please come up to the podium. And tell us about your experience so far and why you would like to continue serving on this committee.
Thank you. Oh, it's on. It's loud. So thank you for inviting me back for an interview for this committee. So the Kingston Improvement Association has been represented on this committee since it was founded in 2001. And I started going to meetings in 2011. I was appointed to the committee in 2013 as the official representative from the KIA. Back in 2012, we pulled together a meeting at the Kingston Library for all residents of the village, businesses and nonprofits and members of the KIA to come and hear about the projects as they were unfolding and to give them an opportunity to weigh in on the project, the things they liked about it, the things they didn't like about it. But I think more importantly, it gave everyone a chance to see potential changes that were coming to the village that they otherwise wouldn't know about. And I think that my role on the committee has been to bring the residents and the community members of Kingston's ideas to that committee and make sure that the residents feel heard as that project unfolded. And then likewise, to prevent any surprises where I think otherwise maybe people wouldn't even know something was happening until the trucks showed up. This was an opportunity to liaison back to our community to make sure that there were no surprises and folks knew what was coming and to keep that project transparent. And I would be grateful to be allowed to continue on that committee and in my role of essentially a liaison between the Village of Kingston and projects the state has planned for the reconstruction, potentially dramatic reconstruction of Kingston Village. So that's why I'd like to stay on that committee.
Very good. Thank you, Susan. Any questions?
Susan, I'll just ask you quickly. I know other members of that committee have expressed that the goals of the committee have been near accomplished, but I know that you've expressed that is not correct. Maybe you could just kind of talk a little bit about that.
So we haven't met for 6 years, and the last plans that we saw were from 2011. And at that point, there were a number of concerns in the village that maybe didn't make sense for our village. And I think it's a pretty profound change. I mean, Kingston Village is, the village model in South Kingstown is one of the things that makes South Kingstown a really special place. And I think protecting the integrity and the history of that village is really important to the future of our town and for the appeal of our town. And there were things in those plans from 2011 that were concerning and concerned a number of people, businesses, nonprofits, and individuals from the community. And then suddenly we didn't meet anymore. And I don't know if the plans still look the way they did 10 years ago. We don't know if they've changed. There's been no community outreach. There's been no conversation until this came up, and I was invited to come back for an interview. This has just sort of been a forgotten thing for 6 years, and we have no idea where it stands. And I think the risk of just sort of letting the state have carte blanche effect on our village is a little scary to me. And I don't know where the project stands. I have no idea. It was 90%, whatever that meant, in 2013 or 14, the last time we actually met. So that's still 90%. So I don't know if they've changed. But I think it's certainly worth a look to see what the new plans are and how it will affect the village. And I think that, likewise, if the state were planning to do big changes to our Main Street or to any other, like Peacedale is also on a state road, we would want members of the community to have looks at that to make sure that it fit the model that works for our citizenry. And I'm not sure, I have no idea what the plans look like now. I haven't seen them since, there have been no drafted plans that I've seen since 2011. And it's a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Susan? All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll let you know.
Thanks so much.
And then also for the Route 138 Reconstruction Project Area Committee, we have Ms. Gail Farris.
Good evening. My name is Gail Farris. I think I've been on the committee since the very beginning. I actually asked if I could be on the committee because I didn't see any representation from West Kingston. I happen to live on the other side of the tracks, and the other side of the tracks always needs someone representing it. So the concerns that Susan expressed for Kingston are very different for West Kingston. We're looking for traffic calming methods. Those are the kind, we talked a lot about roundabouts, and one of our members actually went and visited roundabouts and the value of them. You know, the phases of the plan, West Kingston is a different phase from Kingston. We were talking about entrance and exits from the university and around Peckham Farm area. But as Susan said, we haven't met in years. And I wasn't sure that the committee was still in force because I haven't heard a thing. This is not a COVID thing, obviously, because it's way longer than 2 years. So it seems to me that we would have to start from scratch. The other thing is that I do find that when the people from the Department of Transportation come down and talk to a community, they do listen to a community. You know, I've been living in this part of West Kingston, the same place, for 46 years. And when there was going to be a rerouting of 138 and Route 2 and access to the university from north, they really listened to the people up at Estelle Drive. And I remember that because it had a great effect on Route 138 where I live, which means it was an increase in traffic there. So I had a lot of faith in that, and I found in being in these meetings that they actually do listen to you, and they go back and come back, and the next time they have something that relates to the suggestions that you had made. But again, you can't be doing this once every 6 years, or, you know, go for a blitz for a year or two and then, you know, not meet for a great deal of time. I would like to stay on the committee because I'm still in West Kingston and don't have an intention of leaving it. So I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Questions, commissaries? All right, well, thank you for your service, and we'll let you know.
Thank you.
And next, same committee, Mr. Peter Maynard. Is he here? If he's not here yet, we also have Mr. Doral Beasley.
Good evening. Like Ms. Ferris, I believe also one of the original group started in 2001. For the last decade, our committee has been ignored and circumvented by URI and the Department of Transportation while they continue to make plans on improving, quote unquote, improving the traffic flow through the village of Kingston. Unfortunately, their agenda is not the same agenda as the people that live in the village. Their agenda is to get traffic into the campus, the traffic that's going to URI to get it into the campus, and for the traffic that's flowing east to west on 138 is to get it through Kingston as expeditiously as possible. When our committee was formed back in 2001, we had a number of members of the committee whose we're really concerned about traffic calming, about slowing the traffic down inside of inside the village, especially from, say a quarter of a mile east of the light at 108 to the bottom of Kingston Hill, where, the Keeney entrance. Now, things that were talked about were like bump outs, so that people that were actually crossing the road, pedestrians, would be able to come out to a point where the traffic could actually, somebody driving through the village could actually see that person. What happens now, unfortunately, especially at the crossing at South Road, is if you're traveling east on 138 during the day, during the school day, when university's open, all 31 parking spaces on both sides of the road in the historic district, they're all filled, and those cars that closest to the South Road intersection block your view of anybody trying to cross the road. So all of a sudden, if you're daydreaming, you'll see a person just almost right in front of your car. So that's why the bump outs. Now, wondered if you could bring up a map for me. Can that be displayed?
I think there's a much broader discussion about this whole project that we had, and I think at that point we can look at maps. But
no, I really would like to show this, because it goes to my point of what's the problem in the village.
Right, but tonight, we just don't have time for it, Doral. So this is just to fill spots on this committee. So I think I understand here from what you're saying that you are very interested in continuing.
Okay, all right. Let me just say this then. Whatever ends up happening with this project, the one thing that has not been addressed, that has to be addressed, it must be addressed, is to reconnect Old North Road to two-way traffic to 138. And here's why. Everybody that lives north of Briar Lane, all those people, all the village residents live north of Briar Lane. The two schools, we have two schools up there. We have two churches up there. We have the Northwoods project that's going to have 20, 30 new homes there that haven't been built yet. When they want to go to Wakefield, they should be able to go to Old North Road, take a left, go down to that intersection, and either one way or the other, take a right or a left, or go down South Road, or take a right or take a left and go down 108 and go to Wakefield. Now, you can't do that today without going through the university. The university does not want Kingston's traffic to go through the university, and the people that live in Kingston, in that part of Kingston, don't want to have to go through the university, because especially in the afternoon hour between 4 and 5, 3:30 to 5, when you go down, Fortin or Briar Lane and take, to get on Upper College Road, you can be sitting in traffic for 20 minutes before you hit the light. So what people do instead, amazingly, they'll take a right on campus or on Bayberry, go down the Lower College Road, go to 138, and then take a left and then come up 138 and go through the village that way. Or they'll take a right on Little Rest Road and become part of their problem. Old North Road has to be reconnected to 138. I don't care if it's multiple traffic signals. I don't care how it's done. It can be done safely, and it has to be fixed during this project.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Any questions for Doral? All right, very well. We'll let you know. And I don't believe I saw Mr. Maynard arrive. Well, no. Okay. Well, with that, I think those were our candidates tonight. Am I missing anybody? All right. Then let's get into the agenda. Terry, if you would take us through it.
Certainly. Good evening. Just to go through this evening's agenda, we have a number of license renewals related to Sunday sale licenses and victualling licenses. Those are pretty standard unless any of the council members have any questions on those.
Maybe it would be good just before we get there, Mike, if you want to, this is the first time we've had a couple council members go through this long list of public hearings. I forget how we take like one class and then we pass that. Is that?
So you just want to go through what the process is going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you can do is you can take each one of them in a group, do the Class A retailer first. Abel, you would just read the name and address of each of those liquor license renewals, ask whether or not there's anyone on the council or the public, whether or not they have any questions or issues, and then move down to the next class. If you just do it by class, if there's a question, we'll address it at the time it comes up. If not, you can keep on going through the list. At the end, there can be a motion to approve or whatever action you're going to take.
Question?
So I will have a few questions about the pump house because it has the outdoor music.
So what you can do is when we get to that, you can pull that aside, you can vote on everything, and then you can go back and focus on that one. And the same for anyone else. If anyone else has one they'd like to have pulled, it'll just be easier if we deal with the ones that don't have questions as a group, and then we can go back to that.
Okay, so that brought us to public hearings, and that is the first public hearing is for the liquor licenses within all the town, for all the vendors in town. The second public hearing is related to the application for renewal for an indoor shooting range license, and that is by Elite Indoor Gun Range. This is a renewal license for the gun range. Again, that's a public hearing. Unless the council has any questions on that item, we can continue on to communications. I will skip consent agenda unless anyone has any questions on any of the consent agenda communications. I'll go down to item C, which are several communications relative to the Union Fire District's Matunic Fire Station and EMS Medical Services Building project. Those communications are open for discussion and direction by the council. There's also a related one, item O, which is Councilwoman Bergner's communication, also requesting that this item be put on the agenda. Down to communication item G, which is an email from Jim Lathrop, and he's requesting creation of a capital program to fund some projects which involve the input of community youth. And I will tell the council that we've had opportunity in the past through the Recreation Commission where there has been youth involvement in various projects, particularly one that comes to mind is the skate park. There was a committee involved with that particular project. We can certainly look into that and perhaps refer this to the Recreation Commission in terms of placing something on the agenda for discussion and inviting any student-aged residents that may want to have some input into the capital program, if that's amenable to the council. Item I is a email from Donna Serpa, and this is, she's the treasurer of the South County Trail Homeowners Association, and this is relative to the status of Michaela Court Road acceptance. And we do have staff here to speak to that, that item in terms of where the town is at, where the developer is at in this process. The town cannot accept a roadway until the developer meets all of the requirements of the town. And our Public Services Director, John Schock, can tell you a little bit more about that, as well as our Planning Director, and where the town is currently in relation to that particular development project. A couple of communications with regard to the BPAC committee. We had a resignation of Jen Judge, and then a subsequent email from Ken Burke requesting an appointment. So the council can choose how to direct on those communications. We spoke of item O, which is the EMS station related to Matuna Schoolhouse Road. And we have a communication from Susan Axelrod with regard to the Kingston Improvement Association. I believe in her interview she kind of alluded to her concerns there, and the council can certainly further direct to staff or to have this back to the Route 138 Project Committee that may be able to look into this and follow up on some of these items in consult with town staff. Mike will have, our town solicitor will have an update on the town manager search, and also a discussion or proposed ordinance on the regulation of chickens and turkeys and animals in general that stray from the owner's property. So you'll learn more about that during the solicitor's report. We do have a couple of other appointments or applications for the 300th Anniversary Steering Committee. You have those applications. Again, just as a reminder that application period is open through November 30th, and we're encouraging any and all town residents to apply if they'd like to be involved with the process of planning the 300th anniversary through the next year. Under new business, we have a couple of items. Our winter road salt bid award. Our Public Services Director has made a recommendation there. We have the resolution to extend the town's declaration of emergency. Again, this is really specific in my mind to the fact that we could be eligible for reimbursement, federal aid, and that we want to be consistent with the state in terms of continuing the declaration of emergency so that we don't miss out on any type of funds that the town could be eligible for related to COVID-19. And item E speaks to the advertisement for a town manager search by the executive firm, and I believe the council will discuss that. You have some information on it. And I think Mike probably will be involved in that discussion as well. And then we have a closed executive session for the council. And that is the extent of your agenda this evening. Are there any questions?
Any questions on any of these agenda items or other matters? I am interested in looking at communications M from Eric Wertheimer concerning our COVID vaccination rate in town. I was surprised when I read those articles that he forwarded to us about our standing in the region. Yeah, put it on to the...
What I can do, Council President, is I can put together a snapshot in terms of the town's status with regard to vaccination rates and also the rate of positivity in terms of COVID-19 and the levels that the town is at this moment. I do know that currently South Kingstown is still at the lower end of the positivity rates for the size of our population. That being said, there are certainly opportunities to promote vaccination clinics that are local. There are some at South Road School over the next month, which I've indicated in my manager's report, and also the school department in collaboration with our EMS director and the state will be putting together vaccination clinics for students 5 to 11, so you'll see that information coming out too. But we can certainly make an effort to pull that to the forefront. We can post this information on the front page of the website, put it out through our social media accounts, and encourage people to take note of the clinics that are available locally.
Right. Well, if there are no other questions, we have about 3 minutes here. Did Peter Maynard show up by any chance? No. Okay. We'll just take a brief recess here, and then we'll convene the regular session at 7:30.
You went. They told me you were on the property. Thank you. Yep. No, you got it.
Susan, you ready to? Hello, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, November 8th. The time is 7:32. We're ready to begin our regular session. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. Please rise and join us. Thank you all. 2B is our land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe, whose land and water we benefit from today. Susan, will you please take the roll?
Council President Collins.
Here.
Council Vice President McEntee.
Here.
Councilwoman Berger.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Item 4 is the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 4A, B, and C.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item 5 is the consent agenda.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to remove communication 8M from the consent agenda.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously as well. That brings us to item 6, which is licenses. Are all of them consented? Indeed they are. All right, that brings us very quickly to item 7, public hearings. 7A is a public hearing relative to the renewal of liquor licenses for the year beginning December 1st, 2021. Said licenses are granted contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, issuance of a certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes, user fees, and lease payments in arrears to the town, and the correction of any fire code violations. All applications for licenses to sell intoxicating beverages under the provision of Title III of the General Laws of 1956, as amended, have been filed as follows. And so we'll just take these by their class, and what I'll do is I'll read the names of the entities seeking the licenses. If anybody wants to speak to any of those, whether it's at the council table or in the public, first I'll ask council members. Then, if there's anybody in the public who wants to speak to them, you'll have an opportunity to speak. So for Class A retailers, we have Jaber's Liquors with George Jaber. PBL Inc., doing business as Liberty Wine and Spirits, Joseph Paglia. Sweeney's Package Store, doing business as Sweeney's Wine and Spirits, Michael Sweeney. And Wakefield Liquors by Jane Costanza. Is there anybody who would have any questions about those licenses? Seeing none. Class B Victualler. 629 Succotash LLC, doing business as Matunic Oyster Bar by Perry Razzo. Apple New England LLC, doing business as Applebee's Neighborhood Grill and Bar by Ronald Igarashi. Bobby G's Inc., doing business as Bobby G's Pub by Karen Sweet. Bombay LLC, doing business as Bombay Flame Restaurant by Muthaya Subaya. Cantina del Rio of South Kingstown, doing business as Cantina del Rio by Ramon Michel. Captain Jack's Inc., doing business as Captain Jack's Restaurant by Jack Piemont. Chop House Inc., doing business as Chop House Grill by Russell Goyette. David Barnes Development Inc., doing business as The Muse Tavern by Daniel Rubino. DPTA Holdings LLC, doing business as Dragon Palace of Wakefield by Peter Santilli. Philippou's Twisted Pizza Wakefield, doing business as Philippou's Twisted Pizza by Effie Philippou Lopez. Hannah's Bistro LLC, doing business as Duck Press by Mark Bryson. Hanson's Pub LLC, doing business as 210 Oyster Bar and Grill, Andrew Bilodeau. Heng D LLC, doing business as Tong D Restaurant by Angie Lim. JSR Corp., doing business as Tony's Pizza Palace by John Reeves. Kabuki Kingstown Corp., doing business as Kabuki Restaurant by Yunqing Lu. Laurel Food and Beverage Inc., doing business as Laurel Lane Country Club. Matunic Pizza Pie Company, LLC, doing business as Matunic Pizza Pie by Kevin Finnegan. Next Door Inc., doing business as The Pub by Kevin Finnegan. Oceanfront Lounge, doing business as The Ocean Mist by Kevin Finnegan. Old Mountain Lanes Inc., doing business as Old Mountain Lanes by Robert Toth. Paliotti Family Enterprises, doing business as The Flats by Peter Paliotti. Phil's Kitchen Inc., doing business as Phil's Restaurant by Kenneth Tetzner. Rose Hill Golf Club by James P. Manning. Surfside Thai Food, LLC, doing business as Satang Restaurant by Nina Conklin. Taj, LLC, doing business as Taj Indian Restaurant and Bar by Devendra Kadka. Tori 2 Corp., doing business as Trattoria Romana South by Scott Sisson. VGB, LLC, doing business as Pasquale's Pizzeria Napolitana by Pasquale Iliano. Wakefield Tavern, LLC, doing business as Tavern on Main by Christian D'Agostino. And that is it for Class B. Anyone have questions on any of those licenses? Anyone from the audience? All right. Class B Limited. Anderson Enterprises, LLC, doing business as DB's Pizza by Jonathan Anderson. Baja's Express, LLC, doing business as Baja's Taqueria and Grill by Bahij Boutros. Rachel's Cafe, LLC, doing business as Rachel's Cafe by Carlos Tavira. VGB, LLC, doing business as Neapolis by Pasquale Iliano. All right, Class B Tavern. Pamphilios, Inc., doing business as Bistro by the Sea by Richard Paulo. South Kingstown Hotel Associates, LLC, doing business as Holiday Inn South Kingstown by EHI SK Holdings Manager Elizabeth Procaccianti. Any questions? All right, Class B Hotel. South Kingstown Hotel Associates, LLC, doing business as Holiday Inn South Kingstown by EHI SK Holdings Manager Elizabeth Procaccianti. Class D, Club Full Privilege, Elks Club of South Kingstown, number 1899 by Michelle Main. And Class T, Legitimate Theater, Contemporary Theater Company by Terrence Simpson. And Pump House Music Works by Daniel U. Collins.
That's the one you want to talk about separately, correct?
Yes.
So, Abel, here's what my suggestion is. I think unless there's any additional input from the community on all of those licenses other than the Pump House, I would suggest that we get a motion on the floor to approve public hearing item 7A, except for the Class T legitimate theater license for Pump House Music Works, and that way you'll incorporate all the necessary language about compliance with laws, etc.
Do we need to close the public hearing first?
I'm sorry, yes, on everything other than Pump House, yes. Good point.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing with the exclusion of the Class T legitimate theater Pump House Music Works.
I'll second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. And then I could entertain a motion on all those as well at this point, correct?
I'll make a motion to approve item 7A with the exclusion of the Class T legitimate theater Pump House Music Works.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. I will recuse myself from discussion of the Class T legitimate theater license request for Pump House Music Works.
All right, I'll entertain any questions relative to renewal of Class T legitimate theater license by the Pump House Music Works by Daniel Collins.
Thank you, Rory. I just wanted this one to come off because we had heard from a number of residents prior about some of the concerns about the pump house, the noise, the people crossing the street, all those different things. Most recently, I've heard from other neighbors who still have concerns. They've sold their homes to get away from the noise. 3 of, I think, 5. It's a very tiny street. They mentioned that the fence on the property for the pump house came down during the tropical storm Henry, and it's not been put back up. It's also a concern to me that, people have concerns about it's outside. I have questions, Mike, about how it's, where we're at with the General Assembly, I guess. And also, just like a very simple thing, like it's all outside on the street. And I've listened in and attended other planning board meetings where we get the landscaping and, make people do cartwheels for the landscaping. And that sort of just has no landscaping plan at all. So how is that different than any other project?
So with regard, I can easily and quickly answer with regard to outside. The governor's order on restaurants and the outside service goes through April of 2022. So that part of it is allowed. Now, that doesn't mean that establishments can violate the noise ordinance, et cetera. They still have to be in compliance with town laws and ordinances. The only difference is that they are allowed to be outside. And again, that portion of the executive order is through April of, and it's either like April, I don't recall what day in April, but it's April of 2022. I have not been made aware through the manager's office or the police department that there have been complaints recently. I know we went through a number of issues over the summer. I know that there was fencing and a wall. I'm hearing this evening that maybe the fencing is not there anymore. I know that there were efforts made to mitigate the noise through some type of material that absorbs the noise, so to speak. If that is an issue, still, we should be processing those issues through our zoning enforcement officer and or perhaps the police department. But again, and Terry, I haven't heard anything recently. Frankly, I thought that was under control, but maybe not.
To my knowledge, there's nothing that has come through the manager's office in terms of communications since the middle of June when I came into this seat. I'll go back and double check, but I've not had any formal communication, email, phone calls that I'm aware of with regard to noise complaints.
But I would encourage anyone, if there are issues that are ongoing there, they should be made available to the manager's office, and then we have various enforcement mechanisms to deal with that.
Mike, can you remind us of what the restrictions were that we imposed on this license when we had met with them regarding this issue?
You know, I'm going to have to look those. I want to be correct in what I'm telling you, so I'm going to have to look that up because I don't have those restrictions in front of me. But yes, there
We wanted to continue the restrictions that we imposed. We'd have to approve this license with those restrictions attached to it. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If that's the way the motion's going to go, it would be subject to all the restrictions presently in place. I wish I could give you that list. We can look.
Mike, when the expiration of the state executive order occurs in April 2022, how does that affect any of the restrictions that we place attached to this license?
Right. So here's what happens. After that executive order goes away, then each individual city and town can determine locally on its own what it wants to do going forward. In the town of South Kingstown, that would require zoning relief. So once the executive order is no longer in effect as it applies to the establishments such as the pump house, you as a council will, and we can work on this obviously prior to getting to that date, you can decide what type of procedures you would wish to follow. I will tell you the default is it goes back to the way it used to be. That's the default. And that's fine if that's what the council desires to do. That's what you can do. It will be automatic. If you want to do something different, if there are establishments that like the idea of being out on the sidewalks and being outdoors because it's a good business model, it's something you'd have to consider. And it would obviously apply across the board to everyone.
Vice President, if I may, if you notice in tonight's public hearing literature that we have, you'll see the David Barnes, the Muse, and you'll see that they came before us and asked for permanent service area outside. So we had to hear that. We heard that, and we approved that. So that's, I think, Mike, that I'm not speaking.
That's what I'm referring to.
See it in the literature we have tonight. So the pump house doesn't have that. They have not come before us and said, when this legislative order is over, we would like to be able to. That's what they would have to come and ask.
That is correct. They would have to come before you before the state of emergency order expires.
So presumptively, we can't make that decision for them. They'd have to request it from us.
Right, because once the executive order expires, they'll no longer have the right to maintain that type of service.
So I have heard from residents who complained, and it's very sad to me when somebody says they're selling their home. The home was sold to someone who is from out of state, and then they're renting it to college students. So that completely changes the flavor of the area, and that is a direct response to the neighbor. And so I just wanted to take a pause because many people had issues months ago, so that we could make sure that everyone is a good neighbor. It's just a theme we sort of have, like when we talk about the ordinance with the animals. It's how to behave in your little area as a community. And so I would be remiss if I didn't want to pause in my own head to say, where are we at with this? So we don't have to approve it tonight, right? We could continue this one to the next meeting, or do we have to approve it tonight?
We have until December 1st. So there is one more meeting. Thanks to Susan's good work on the internet here, let me read you what those restrictions were so that you do have them. So the emergency temporary use permit to the pump house is subject to the same time of service restrictions associated with the applicant's underlying Class T legitimate theater liquor license. That is, alcohol may only be served 1 hour before a performance and during intermission, and subject to the following conditions. Sunday through Thursday, limited to 5 hours of operation, ending no later than 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday, limited to 5 hours of operation, ending no later than 9 p.m. A tent must remain installed over the band, and an 8-foot-high fencing must be installed to shield, as soon as possible, to shield the neighbors. So those were the restrictions, and you certainly could incorporate those same restrictions, and should incorporate those same restrictions going forward.
So if anyone from the public would like to comment on this matter, I invite you to the microphone at this time. Or if anyone from the council would like to continue to conversate on this, I'd be happy to keep it going.
I just have one question. If we could find out from the police chief if they've had to respond to any complaints there recently.
Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, everyone. To the best of my knowledge, without doing a full search within the last 3 months, I think that we've had possibly one complaint, and that was about the music. And I believe it wasn't necessarily about the volume. I believe the complaint was after the time when they were supposed to cease and desist playing of music. If I may add also, I don't know if they're still even playing outside right now. I think it looks as though, as I've driven by, it looks as though that area has been not used. So I don't know if they're inside, playing inside now or not. But I would have to do more of a thorough search of our records. If we want to bring it up at the next council meeting, I'll be able to forward that to the manager for everyone to take a look at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So at this time, our options are we could close the public hearing now, or we could table this a week to get more information.
So I would be in favor of tabling it for a week. I just, this license will go through to the spring. So when they will potentially be playing music outdoors again, I personally love the Pump House. I think it's an asset to our community. But I do recognize that, I also have had a couple of people reach out regarding the fence. So I'd like to get that taken care of now before they begin to play outdoors again. If we could table this for a week, follow up with the Pump House, make sure that they're taking care of the fence, I think that would be amenable.
All right, Mike, do we have to take any action this time if we decide to table it?
There would have to, I think, Jessica, basically you're making a motion to continue this public hearing.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing.
To November 22nd.
Till November 22nd.
Second?
Anyone opposed? All right, that item is tabled to November 22nd.
All right, thank you. That brings us to 7B. There's an AB. 7B is a public hearing relative to an application for renewal of an indoor shooting range license in accordance with the South Kingstown Town Code, Chapter 9, Licenses and Miscellaneous Business Regulation, Article 6, Indoor Shooting Ranges, Section 9-158, Term of License, Renewal, Transfer, application by IDGR 15, LLC, doing business as Elite Indoor Gun Range, by Mark Fay, member for property located at 371 Rose Hill Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island, and designated on Assessor's Plat 33, Lot 30, consisting of 121.57 acres.
If I may, kind of in keeping with this theme here, this is a topic that we had heard a lot about from residents that live close by. There were some noise complaints. I think that we need to take that into consideration. I want to make sure that they also, as we're asking the Pump House, are being respectful to their neighbors. So I'm guessing that you're here to speak to that.
I am. My name is Sven Soderberg. I'm one of the partners with IDGR 15 and one of the operating partners of the firearm range.
Welcome back, Sven.
Thanks.
I don't know if you just want to give us, you can talk about Elite, but Mike, at some point, maybe just talk about sort of this ordinance and the regulations. This is really indoor, separated from the outdoor uses on the property, but maybe first, Sven, if you want to just...
Yeah, this application is for renewal of the indoor firearms range for Elite Indoor Gun Range. Just want to say we've had another really safe year. Everything's gone well for us, so if I can answer any questions, I'm more than happy to.
So there clearly are two different issues here. The issue that's presently before you on an annual basis, pursuant to the ordinance that was adopted by the town council, this license, which is for indoor shooting, needs to be renewed annually. And it is a public hearing, and individuals have the right to obviously address the council with their concerns. I know, obviously, and you all know, there are a lot of concerns about what's going on outside of the shooting, the indoor shooting range, and that actually is not licensed by you. Indoor is licensed by you, and I'm sure you'll hear from the applicant and perhaps the chief of police if there have been any issues with regard to indoors. Outdoors, what's going on there is what's called a legal nonconforming use, and the question is the extent of that use. And certainly the council and the members of the public can address that. But it is important for you in terms of your responsibility tonight on this license is that this is a very separate and distinct matter from what's happening outside. It's like in a sense, it's like a liquor license. If you are complying with all the regulations related to the license, then the license should be renewed. If there are issues with what's going on inside those premises, then you have every right to question it and perhaps not renew it. What you can't do is say, because there may be issues with what's going on outside, we're going to connect that to what's going on inside, because they're two very distinct legal issues.
So as a relatively new member of the council, I appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you.
All right, so questions from council members for the applicant? All right, seeing none, it is a public hearing, so if there's anybody here who's here to speak on this public hearing, this matter, please come to the podium now. All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Do I hear a motion on 7B?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 7B.
I'll second.
So moved. Any discussion?
Just a quick, so we're just approving contemporary theater, oh no, sorry, wrong item, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Okay, seeing none, is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Ben. And that brings us to communications, 8. 8C, emails from Carol and David Styler, Robert and Jacqueline Hefner, Lou Krastowski, Thomas and Diane McHugh, John and Justine Dolan, Richard and Kristen Schwab, and Christian and Christy Mundy, concerning plans to expand the Union Fire District's Matunic Station and accommodate the town's emergency medical services. Those have been received. This is a matter that came up at the last meeting as well. Terry, do you want to just give us a brief sort of rundown?
Certainly. As you recall, at the last town council meeting and the previous 2 planning board meetings, there has been public comment with regard to the Union Fire District's application for construction of a new fire station, along with an ancillary building that would serve as an EMS building for the town's EMS department. Just a little bit of background with regard to this. The regulatory authority lies with the zoning board for development plan review with regard to this project. The planning is currently under plan review with the planning board, has gone through 2 meetings. Planning board is advisory to the zoning board, and it has not yet completed the planning board development review. There has been significant public comment with regard to primarily the size of the parcel in relation to the footprint of both structures that are being proposed. The planning department had worked closely with UFD and their engineers and designers to present an alternative plan at the previous planning board meeting. We've had discussions in that regard. Chief Craig Stanley, and our Director of Planning have been involved with trying to work to see if there is some way to put forth a plan that is amenable to the neighbors as well as suitable for the town in terms of being able to provide an EMS bay at that location. As you know, with the communications you have in front of you, that there is some continued concerns from the neighbors, and that's where we're at this point. Staff has also been in conversations with, I think I had mentioned this at the last meeting, with the land trust in terms of the adjacent property to see if there was any way that there could be some kind of easement and or swap of property in order to allow for a larger buffer in relation to the neighbor. And because of the restrictions on that land trust property, there is just no way for the land trust, as much as they were willing to help, to be able to do anything with allowing for even 20 feet of use of the adjacent land trust property. So, we continue to explore options. We understand in our hearing the surrounding community. Currently, it's still at the planning board level in terms of moving it forward to the zoning board. I will also note that the UFD did present 2 versions of the plan, one with the replacement of the UFD building and an EMS building, and an alternate plan without an EMS building to the planning board at the last planning board meeting. And so that is basically the status at this point of this project under development plan review.
All right, thank you. Discussion at the table here.
Terry, the project then still is in the hands of the planning board at this time? They have not come to any conclusions yet, or where is the project right now?
At the last planning board meeting, and I think Jamie Rabbit is here and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but the planning board advised staff to put together a memorandum for potential favorable review of the plan. That's where that stands. So it's on the next, I believe it's on the next planning board meeting. And I will ask Jamie if he would just comment if that's correct or if I'm mistaken.
Okay, if you could just come up to the podium, Jamie.
Thank you, everyone. As Terry has spoken this evening, it was before the planning board at their November meeting. It was tabled for any action that night. They did direct staff to entertain language in a favorable manner and any associated conditions that may be necessary with regards to seeking further compliance with the regulations. So we're in the process of developing that staff memo and guidance with the planning board, and they will take that up at their next regularly scheduled meeting in December. I believe it's the 14th.
Very good. Jamie, you want a question?
Excuse me, the November 20. Sorry, Terry, thank you. November 23rd meeting.
So
They all blend together.
what?
All the meetings blend together.
So I listened to the October 26th meeting when it happened, and then I was listening before this meeting, and it begins with legal Amy Goins saying the planning board, it's not their job to say this is the best site for EMS. They're not doing the thumbs up, thumbs down on where EMS should be. Really, as I heard it, the planning board is looking at what's being proposed and giving feedback on what's being proposed. The decision to locate EMS was a council decision to go forward in that lease in June when the vote was 4-1. So, I mean, am I correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not for the planning board to decide that is the best spot. The planning board is just evaluating that spot. That's the way I heard it.
You are correct, Councilwoman Bergner. The
Right.
planning board has an application for a very specific site.
Yep.
They are evaluating the existing regulatory criteria associated with that site. The regulatory criteria does not include an evaluation of the best site in the community. Their review is correlated directly to the site before them as part of the application.
Right. So I did hear a lot of comments about people feeling like if you don't support the project, then people are going to die. Or, who doesn't support saving lives? I mean, it resonates deeply with my family, how important first responders are. EMS saved my child's life, so I'm not here, but somewhere else. So it's not that for me. I am trying to decide and give input on what's the best for the whole town. I recognize that Union Fire has spent a lot of time waiting for the town to come to the table, reorganizing their plans, all of that. I just keep going back to this is a very small lot. We have maximized its use. If we put EMS there, I'm concerned, based on what I heard at the planning board, that it's not scalable. Should we need a second rig? We're only building one bay. I feel like we're going to commit $1 million in resources and knowing it could be potentially obsolete midway before we finish paying for it. So that's not how I spend my money, so I can't spend the community's money knowing it's already wasteful. So, or potentially like obsolete before the project goes. So I have been, when I voted no in June, really trying to say, is there another option? And even when the vote went 4-1 and I was the only one not, there was discussion about continuing to look for another site. So I keep going back to where are we? I want to do what Craig Stanley needs for EMS for our community because we need that, but I want to do it in the best, I want to spend the money in the best possible way, not just for 2021, but for 2030 or whatever. So I don't want someone to go, what were they thinking? They knew we needed 2 rigs, we needed this, and they did that anyway. Maybe I wouldn't be on the town council when that happens, and people say, what were they thinking when they built that? Like what we say about why did we build Broad Rock sometimes. So I don't want to make a decision and spend $1 million knowing in 5 years Craig's going to be back here saying we need to have another space, we need to do this. When we have rescue money, we have options that we haven't pushed forward. We haven't looked at spending rescue money to improve infrastructure. I think our community strongly would approve any EMS project. We hear many, many people come forward and speak at meetings about it. So I keep going back to saying, is there a better location for the long-term community level needs and also the appropriate spending of our money in a way that's mindful to the community? So that's why we can bring O into this, but that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Other discussion on this item? So Jimmy said that you're putting together a memo favorable to the application as directed by the planning board. And I heard also from Terry that 2 separate plans were put forward, one with the EMS building and one without. Does the memo distinguish between those? Is there, I mean, what's the feel?
We will do our best to structure a motion that potentially leaves options available to Union Fire District in the advent that situations change. And more so that Union Fire District is not required to come back to the planning board with an alternative plan. So if they went to the zoning, again, the planning board is serving in an advisory role to the zoning board. So planning is only giving guidance to the zoning board. As a planning director, I would not want to give advice to the planning board that put Union Fire District at risk at zoning if zoning only approved one component of their plan, and then in essence they'd have to restart from the beginning. So it's my intent to structure a motion that potentially gives them the ability to do a phase 1 in essence and a possible phase 2. If someone doesn't approve both phases, they still have their option of phase 1, and I would view phase 1 as the fire apparatus building. So again, we'll also be seeking guidance from council as we formulate that motion.
All right, thanks. Other questions? All right. Do I hear a motion on these communications? I think with this many different letter writers, I'll just invite people to come up and discuss this at comments from interested citizens. And then we'll also have a separate discussion on this coming up on another communication. So. Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion to refer item 8C to the planning board.
Second, for purposes of discussion, Mike, I got a few questions for you. In the event that this project gets the approval it needs from the zoning board of review and it comes to the council, and the council does not authorize the expenditures of the monies necessary for the 10-year lease, the project dies at that point? There is no resurgence of it?
That is correct, because the project needs both zoning board approval and your approval.
And in the interim, before it comes...
At least in terms of where the $1 million is coming from, right?
For EMS, not for the Union Fire, can still do its station.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The Union Fire District could still renovate and do what it wants with its station. It just would mean that the EMS building would not be built if the council didn't approve it.
So in the interim, before this comes to the council for authorization of the expenditure of monies, and there is an alternative plan or location identified for which a different route could go, what happens then?
Well, then obviously the council has a whole new option in front of it, if that's and you are free to consider that and make a decision on it. Yes.
That new plan would potentially have to go through the planning board and then to the zoning board of review
Correct.
and then back to us?
Well, yeah. So there's a lot of ifs. It depends on where it's located, what kind of zone it's in. Does it need zoning approval or does it not need zoning approval? So those I can't address until we know, number one, is there another option that's viable? And number two, if there is, where it's located, what zoning district is it in? And there are ways to approach that. But yes, ultimately, the final decision is going to be with the 5 of you.
Thank you.
Other discussions on this motion? And, is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to 8G, email dated October 29th, 2021, from Jim Lathrop, requesting creation of a capital program to fund projects suggested by the community's youth. It's been received and placed on file. What would you like to do with it? Everybody will have a chance to talk.
So, if I may, When you were talking about this, I don't know if you were particularly clear or direct to say you're going to be able to talk during comments of interested citizens. That's all. I think that's what they missed.
Yeah. So everyone is invited to speak on any matter that they want during comments from interested citizens. That's coming up right after we get through communications here. So item G.
So I thought Jim Lathrop's idea was very interesting, and we did talk about it in the work session, but I actually didn't think it should be referred to the recreation department. I thought we actually refer it to the school department because it would be a really great educational school-wide thing using some of their money to do some participatory budgeting. We like the idea. I mean, I personally like the idea a lot, but I think you can see how stakeholders at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school might be more excited. It might be more of a community learning project that all school children might be interested in being part of. So I thought perhaps we could refer it not to the rec department, but to the school department.
We can refer it to both, too. So
sure.
But further discussion, or do I hear a motion? Or is that?
I'd actually prefer that we send this to the Recreation Commission because we have more control. We can sort of direct them to consider it. If we send it to the school committee, they can always ignore it. We don't have so much control as to what they can do, whereas we can place this sort of thing on the Rec Commission's agenda.
I hear you, but I feel the only counter to that is that those budgets are very tight and very committed funds. Where will we would have to then, going forward, allocate $20,000 to the rec department rather than, that's all.
I guess my reasoning is if we want this request to be actually satisfied for the possibility for it to exist, I think it is a better chance if we have it go to the Rec Commission. But I can get behind your motion if you want to send it to the school committee.
We could do both.
I think both is the answer here.
I would agree.
So I move that we send Jim Lathrop's communication item to both the Recreation Department and the school committee for consideration, for them to consider this as a participatory budgeting initiative.
Second.
So moved. Any further discussion? All right, anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 8I is an email dated October 31st, 2021 from Donna Serpa, Treasurer of South County Trail Homeowners Association, concerning the status of Michaela Court Road acceptance.
Yes, this particular item, I am going to ask John Chalk to help me with this one if he's present. Essentially, this road hasn't been accepted yet because there are some items that haven't been satisfied by the developer at this point. The town is aware that the developer has committed to the snow removal process on Michaela Court through the winter. I know that is a concern of the Homeowners Association, as indicated in this note, and there is a performance bond that the town is holding from the developer that could be taken under consideration. But John, can you give a little bit more detail?
Good evening. So as with all developments where the roads are looking to be accepted by the town, the developer has to complete the improvements according to the plans that were approved by the planning board. There are some punch list items out there that have not been completed, and we won't accept the road for subdivision until that occurs. There's also, with a lot that was sold, there's a discrepancy on an open space issue that I believe may be coming back to the planning board to resolve. That's more of a paperwork issue, but again, until all these issues are resolved, we're not in a position to recommend acceptance to the town council. And unfortunately, we have no mechanism to, I guess, encourage the developer to complete these things in a timely manner either. That's something we may have to look at in the future, but we don't have that ability right now, other than we've got the performance bond, and typically when the performance bond becomes due, that's the financial incentive for them to try to get the improvements done and not having to, encumber the winter storm removal as well.
Just a quick question. 5A developers sold 3 lots to Gashi.
Yeah.
Who is the developer when you say the developer?
So the developer of the subdivision is 5A.
Okay. So
And that developer sold 3 lots to another individual. That's where the open space, there's open space demarcations along the front of the lots near the road, and that was violated with a driveway entrance. So they're trying to possibly amend that driveway openings administratively through the planning department to move the driveway to where it was as built in the location that it's located now. That's a paperwork issue.
So 5A, they're doing another project in town, right?
Correct. There's one on Curtis Corner that's under construction.
Okay. So is there any way that we can work with 5A to sort of make some of these things come?
We've tried to encourage them to complete the punch list, as with all developers. One of the problems that we see is if they don't complete the punch list in a timely manner, then other things crop up. So it's to their advantage to complete any punch list items as soon as possible, so there aren't other deficiencies down the road.
If I may, I might add that 2 things. First of all, John mentioned there's a performance bond. That's always the last action you take for a whole lot of reasons. One of the main ones being is that when you take that performance bond, for whatever reasons, mainly because if the town that has to oversee it, it means you're paying prevailing wage, it just gets extremely expensive, very involved. So although it's there, and we'll use it if we have to, that is a huge incentive, because when you pull so much performance bond, that particular developer has a black eye now going forward, and obtaining new performance bonds for new projects becomes an issue. The second thing I wanted to point out, though, is, as Terry mentioned earlier, is that the developer has committed to handling the snow plowing if, in fact, this isn't all resolved by them. If the developer fails to do that, my office would then bring a temporary restraining order type action in court to get him to do what he's supposed to be doing. So I think that the main concern from what I read through the correspondence is the snow plowing, and I think that one's under control, and if it's not, we know what we need to do to make it happen.
Motion to refer item 8I to staff.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion?
Just a quick question. So there's some of these 16 lots that are not developed, and those are the ones that were intended to be affordable. Is that what's outstanding too? John? Do you know, John?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
Okay.
I can gather that and get it back to the council to be certain.
I just feel for the people who live here, and I don't know what incentives and pressure we can do. I hear that he's going to plow, but okay. Doesn't sound like.
All right. Other discussion? It sounds like we'll get an answer on that issue. You ready to vote on it? Okay. Is anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item J, an email dated October 30th, 2021 from Jen Judge advising of her resignation from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Route 1 Stewardship Plan Development Committee. Those have been received. What do we want to do?
I move that we accept Jen Judge's resignation from the BPAC committee, and we direct the town clerk to thank her for her service.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item K, email dated November 1st, 2021 from Ken Burke requesting the appointment of an applicant to fill the vacancy created by Jen Judge's resignation from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. That has been received. I believe there is an applicant, but we have not reviewed that person, so we can take that into consideration when we get to that portion of the agenda, of course. But what would we like to do with this? We could use this as an opportunity to ask the clerk to schedule that interview.
I'll make a motion that we invite the applicant to the next meeting for an interview to take place during the work session.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item M is an email dated November 2nd, 2021 from Eric Wertheimer concerning local COVID vaccination rates. That has been received. We got an email last week with a couple of articles linked to it, sort of comparing the various municipalities in Washington County and their vaccination rates. South Kingstown, much to my surprise, was lowest on the list. So I did a little investigating in the DOH website. It looks like, our positivity rate is still very good. All throughout the pandemic, I feel like we've done a great job as a community. I don't want to be a doom and gloomer here. But it looks to me like, just looking at the numbers on the DOH website, that we're last in the whole state in terms of our youth population, up to, it goes age 25. That was the cohort that was listed there. And so lagging far behind the rest of the state in that cohort. We're 25 to 44, I think we're third best in the state. 44 to 65, top 10, above 65, 100% of our people are vaccinated. So it's really that younger age group that isn't getting vaccinated locally. So I asked for this to be taken off the consent agenda just because I'm wondering if there's things we can do as a town to help do outreach to that population. So, Terry, if you want to speak to that.
Yes. As I stated earlier in the work session, I think there are certainly things that we can do to raise awareness with that particular demographic with regard to use of social media, the town website, reaching out in general in multiple ways to try to capture that demographic and encourage and promote the vaccination clinics that are local and point them to the DOH website, which is a very simple mechanism in making an appointment for a vaccination.
Just a clarifying question. When you're talking about 25 and under, is that 16 to 25, or is that
I think when I
all
was
people
looking
under
at
25?
it was still before they had approved the 5 to 11, so I think it was the 12 to 25, whatever
12 to 25?
Yeah, I think.
So I'm just interested to see how those numbers will change with the new guidance around children 5 to 11 being eligible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably an opportune time to, have this discussion be, public visibly, and I'm sure the schools are interested in making it happen as well.
The adult rate as a whole, which I assume to be 18 and over, right? The adult rate in South Kingstown as a whole is 64% fully vaccinated. That's a full 1/3 of our population adult population is not vaccinated. As you can see, I'm cautious. I find that frightening. I hope we can do a better job here in South Kingstown to get above 2/3 adult vaccination rate. We need to do better.
All right. So I don't know. Would it be helpful to have a motion from us on this, or do you think we have direction that?
Entirely up to the council. If you'd like to make a motion, that's fine. If you refer it to the manager's office, that's fine, and we'll pursue that.
So I'll make a motion that we refer this item M to the manager's office.
Second.
So moved. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right. That motion carries unanimously. Item O is an email dated November 3rd, 2021 from Councilwoman Deborah Bergner concerning the potential location of an emergency medical services station in the South Shore area of town. I
spoke quite a bit at the earlier time. I just wanted to also say that at both our meeting and at the planning board meeting, it was said that we didn't do an RFP for land. We didn't go out and try to find state land, talk to DEM or a private person to try to find the lot. I do feel like that we were remiss. People did admit that we didn't do that. The very next day, people started sending me emails saying, what about this location over here? Can you look at this? So I know that our community wants and needs EMS on the south side of town. I just want to put it in the right location to service the most people and wisely spend our money. I wasn't sure like how many calls we got, all of that. It was still more data that we didn't really have. I don't recall that we got all of that in June when we discussed this, but it still goes back to this is the smallest lot in this little weird area, and we have other options, even American Rescue Funds, to buy a lot. I know Craig Stanley said it was $1.5 million to build the building, and he was estimating $1 million for a piece of property. I mean, that's a big piece of property in the south side of town. I can't imagine that it would be that much. However, I do think that we have the ability and the means to look in that direction, and the town, I think, would be supportive of any expenditure in that area because it does serve the entire community. So I just keep going back to I would want the council to look at other options. And I say that not wanting to hold up Union Fire, who's doing their due diligence. They want to renovate their station. They've wanted to do that since 2014. We don't want to get in their way. And I sense their frustration, but I just want to do it right for all of us in the community. That's all.
Would it be helpful to have Craig, I don't know if you are prepared to come and speak at all.
Good evening, Craig Stanley, Chief of EMS. I'm just going to echo what the town manager was saying. We're still working through the process. Certainly open to any options, whatever works best for the community. I'm always looking. I have been for several years for that corridor of land, so I'm certainly open to, if another piece of land was to become available, certainly looking at that option. I'm going to do what's best for the community.
Any questions for Craig Lacey?
I have one, maybe two questions. The proposed location, is that your ideal location? And if it is not, what would be your ideal location?
Well, that's hard to say. Obviously, closest to Route 1 and south of East Matunic towards the Charleston line, so Ministerial Road, Matunic Beach Road, in that corridor right there. Because our challenges are getting, down to the south, and also we have extended response times up Ministerial Road, Tuckertown, South Shore Village, Gravelly Hill is significant. So we're trying to find the best medium to service that area. And when I started in 2017, I inherited this system where we had a station at the Public Safety Building, and then we had a 12-hour truck at the Public Services Building. My first priority was to make that truck 24 hours, and the council supported that. But my challenge, and really that's where I have three challenges. One is the geography of getting there. My call volume continues to increase for the two trucks that we have, and we have extended response time. So my plan with the two previous town managers was adding a third truck, adding a fourth truck, and moving that third truck in the southwest part, and then in the future moving a truck towards West Kingston near Route 2 or 138. That's the long-term plan of doing that.
So in a very perfect EMS world, looking ahead 10 years, would you say that there could be better locations, or would you say that this works?
No, I think that's where the good location is based on population, the calls that we run in that area, the age demographics. And as you add more trucks, you have a division of labor, I call it. You divide the amount of calls, so not all 2 trucks are out of service. Because very routine now, out of 24 hours, the 2 trucks are out of service for up to 18 hours. Because we may run 10, 18, 20 calls in 24 hours. So we have significant time in the town where there's not coverage. So that's why I'm trying to add this. And I could add, 3 more trucks to the public services building, but I still have to get down Route 1. That doesn't solve my response time. That solves my volume problem, definitely.
Would you anticipate in the future, 5-10 years down the line, your call volume increasing even more than what it is now?
Crystal ball, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would, based on the age demographics that we have in the town, we've increased about 7%. We've increased 18% since 2020. On average, we're averaging 50-plus calls extra per month from last year. So the volume has really increased substantially.
So I would imagine that then you would have to add additional vehicles to the fleet in that southern end of the town.
Well, I would like to think I would be able to add the truck more towards the West Kingston and have 4 trucks that in like a 2 or 3 mile radius response zones and have those in each location.
Thank you.
Any questions for Craig? Just in terms of the process, Craig, I know that this has been something on the radar screen for you for years. It's been a discussion about the slow response times in that area of town. How did it come about? Like the UFD just sort of was aware of those discussions ongoing, and they
we had discussed the Tuckertown station several years ago as a possible option, and then they were going to redesign the Batunik station, and said, well, there might be an opportunity for us to either build it within the station, and then as it progressed, another building outside. And that's how that kind of transpired.
Did you go through any other sort of search for locations as that time was going?
Just through real estate and looking at the town, what the town owns, the property that they own, looking at what the land trust owns, and that's kind of where we're at.
Gotcha. And then I guess so. Because if the council decides that this isn't the path that we see as viable, does that provide a big problem for you, or assuming we're only going to make that decision when we see that there might be some other viable path, does this push you back in time?
Well, we still go back to the drawing board, but even I look at it from a time perspective. If this was to pass in the EMS station, we're still a good 18 months away before that station is open. So, timing is everything. So from this process, if it's determined that the EMS station is not in the best interest, then we will definitely go back to the drawing board. But still, the time frame will be about the same. And then in this respect, the public's aware of it. And, the council, acknowledges that we're going to need funding for this. So from my perspective, whether it's the EMS station in Batunik, I feel confident that we'll find another solution if that doesn't happen. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah.
It gets most of the way there, I think. Terry.
Council President, I would also like to acknowledge that there have been questions with regard to data and what is the rationale behind identifying that we need more down in the southern end of town. Chief Stanley he's compiling that and we'll have that so that the council has the information that substantiates the need. The public can then see that need with regard to call volume, with regard to demographics, with regard to the look at the area and call times, response times. We did hear that. We understand that the public wants to see what's supporting this need. And we will have that for the council in short order, so that you can see that.
And just one other question, I guess, would be, we've put some time and effort, obviously, into this current plan. Obviously, it's before the planning board, and then it'll go to the zoning board. Say that it's clear that, again, we're not moving in that direction. Are there things that we can use from the process up to this point that'll be useful in giving us a head start and, whatever?
I think the biggest positive would be that the community's more aware that we're looking for land. And I think that will definitely help things. And hopefully that will provide something for us to use.
And then just finally, I don't know how many resources the UFD has put toward this, but do we make them whole? How do we do that?
If I may, Council President, I would like to recognize that Union Fire District has been incredibly cooperative, responsive, inclusive in terms of bringing the town along, understanding that we are in need of this particular resource, and extending that offer for this site. So the town does have, we went through a good faith agreement in terms of having UFD pull us into the process of design. And so there would be some payout in terms of what we would owe UFD in terms of their efforts to design an EMS building for the town. And I think that if we were not to be able to move forward with that site, that those plans would be beneficial, obviously, moving forward. Maybe not exact, but beneficial in the process if we had to look elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's kind of able, that process we've already done, so that we have a head start from that perspective of the footprint, what we would need, depending on where else we were to look.
Mike, I got a question for you. Is that correct that we would owe UFD compensation if, in fact, we decided not to go through with that project for the services that they've engaged in relative to the design?
So I haven't looked into yet what exactly UFD has done in terms of financial commitments up to this point, but I would just say this in general, that normally if a party in good faith does something for another party and they've expended resources, there would be an expectation that they would be made whole. That's just in general. In this specific case, I'm not sure, but I will say this. If in fact there's a design that has been created, which there has obviously by engineers, architects, whatever, and we can use that, if in fact this goes somewhere else, then that would even be more of a reason to pay compensation for the use of those plans.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? Thank you, Craig. I think that's helpful. So one last thing, just for everybody who's here to speak on this matter tonight. Hopefully you've heard our conversations, and that's been somewhat helpful in sort of understanding where things are at the moment. It seems like at the moment UFD is going forward through the planning process with sort of two options on the table, one with the EMS, one without it. They are, I think, looking for direction from us here at the council table about whether we are still happy to commit $1 million of funds to make the EMS station there happen. I think one of the things the council is looking for, of course, is a viable option, alternative to this. So when we get to public comments in a few moments, we all look forward to hearing that. I think everybody at the council table, and as you heard the chief, we all do want to find something that makes everybody happy. And hopefully we will do that. So I appreciate appreciate your patience and sort of listening to the conversation to this point. In just a couple more minutes, we'll get you. All right. We need a motion. Do I hear a motion on item O?
Second.
So moved. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right. That motion carries unanimously. Item P, an email dated November 3rd, 2021 from Susan Axelrod, President of the Kingston Improvement Association, expressing concerns regarding the state's ongoing reconstruction of roads in Kingston Village and the importance of maintaining the town's Route 138 Reconstruction Project Area Committee. That has been received. We've already discussed it somewhat before, but we want to have further discussion.
I got a question for you, Terry and Mike. If we wanted to direct the Route 138 Reconstruction Committee to continue meeting or establish a new purpose to achieve sometime in the future, can we direct them to do that?
Council created the committee, so the council can certainly change or update the charge to the committee.
So why is it that the committee stopped meeting? Who made the decision for them or on their behalf that they should no longer meet?
To my knowledge, and I'm going to ask John Schock this question too, or maybe some of the committee members know, there was a pause with regard to DOTs moving forward any part of this project. And John, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Yep. So I've been on the committee since it was formed. So what I can tell you is the project limits are from Route 108 to Route 2. And RIDOT got the design up through about 75%, which is the environmental permitting portion. And at that point, from what I recall, DEM had a significant number of comments to comply with Phase 2 stormwater. At that point, the consulting engineer for RIDOT, I believe, my memory serves me correct, was looking for a substantial change order to move the project forward, and at that point, it pretty much stopped. And in the interim, the Route 138 bridge over the Amtrak corridor was found to be in very poor condition. That project has been carved out and is going on its own. We got a PS&E submittal, which is like the submittal just before bids. That was in September 2020, I believe, and we're awaiting that project to go out to bid. And I think, as most people know, under the current RIDOT director, their focus has been on bridges. So I think that's another, I don't want to speak for RIDOT, but I think that's where a lot of RIDOT's focus is right now statewide, is to get the bridges, to get the bridge deficiencies resolved statewide. We did have a meeting back with RIDOT back in April, asking to jumpstart the project again. They reaffirmed that the late Senator Chafee's earmark money is available, but now the project cost exceeds that earmark amount, so they're either looking to change the scope of the project or try to come up with additional funding. I had told them in no uncertain terms that we do not want to start removing items from the project. It's been through a very long process to get where we are now. So we're trying to, and actually after the last council meeting, I emailed them again asking for an update, but I haven't heard back from them. So I will call them again tomorrow to try to get the project jump-started. But that's essentially where we are with the project.
So at this point, is there no incurrences of projects happening currently for which the Route 138 Reconstruction Committee could vet out? Is that what there's nothing happening right now?
So I think until RIDOT can come up with funding, and I want to back up a little bit, the funding they have available is really just going to be for Phase 1, which is going to be from 108 to the Amtrak bridge. I don't know, to be quite honest, if we'll ever see the second phase from the Amtrak bridge to Route 2. They're just trying to scramble right now to come up with funding to do that first phase. So the only thing that makes me a little nervous is the design was pretty much done other than getting the environmental approval. So to go backwards on design issues, they were thoroughly vetted with many project area committee meetings. If we start revisiting the design, I think it's just going to drag the project out that much longer. So, but again, I think the first step is, not to be redundant, is to try to get RIDOT jump-started, to get Phase 1 back going again.
Is there anything that the state delegates could do, the reps or the senator could do to help RIDOT advance the funding and the project?
I think the more voices would be helpful. I think the university would help. They're certainly a partner in Phase 1. The campus is right there, so I think either the local delegation, the university, and the town collectively, we can hopefully maybe push a little harder with RIDOT.
Right.
Do you want Susan to come forward? No? Susan's still here. Susan's still there.
Susan, do you want to speak to this matter at all? If you think there's more to be said, please. I would say I don't think there's any serious consideration of disbanding this committee. That's not something that's on the table.
Thank you. Susan Axelrod. I think at the last meeting you talked about potentially making the committee something that sort of stays in the background and is called upon if needed. But I think that begs the question of who's going to call us when we're needed and if things are just happening without our input. And I think the committee was valuable and offered a lot of good insight. And I appreciate that the state has included this committee in thoughtful conversation for 20 years. But it is risky to allow the state to continue along. This is Phase 1 we're talking about through the village. Like the fact that they're eliminating Phase 2, sorry, I'm concerned about the village, and that's where I'm concerned. That is the part we're talking about. To have that continue without the public input is where I think we're running into risk. And in the letter I wrote, I also pointed out that we just saw this on Upper College Road, where decisions were made with no community input. Once people realized what was happening, they said, it's too late, we can't do anything to affect change. And the state or URI chose 2 bicycle lanes over pedestrian access. And I don't know who made that choice and if that could have been affected, but we have 2 bicycle lanes and no sidewalk and no crosswalks. And how was that change made? And I think if the community were involved, there would have been a conversation about having access from the pedestrians from the village to campus. That access has been there for 200 years, and now it's suddenly gone, and we had no choices. And if things like that happen through the village, and then it's too late to make change, we sort of have egg on our face because we saw this happening and chose not to let the public be involved. And the 90%, I don't even know what that means because we haven't seen the plans for 10 years. But I think it's really important that the town say to the state, we want the committee to be active and not leave it up to the state to decide if there's a reason to call us, they'll call us. I think it's important to the town to have eyes on this project because it's our village and it's important to our town's future to protect that village. And everyone on this committee is concerned with slowing traffic down and pedestrian access and all the same things the state is concerned with, but we know our village because we live there and we're invested in the village. And even earlier when Dorald got up, he talked about all the things that he felt were unresolved in the last plan. Well, they're still unresolved. And maybe he has good ideas and maybe he doesn't, but if we don't air them out, we'll never address those. And then we'll look back in hindsight and be like, oh, we lost all of our crosswalks. The state didn't think we needed crosswalks. And it'll be too late to affect change. So I think the community not only needs to continue with this committee, but also needs to be an active committee at the table when these decisions are being made. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Susan. So in terms of formulating a resolution to this item, I think John's idea is probably a decent one. We can direct the manager's office to coordinate a conversation with delegation, URI, our own public works, try to jumpstart the conversation at the state level. Obviously, one of the messages we want to convey is that this committee needs to continue to have public input on the process.
Sorry, can I also add that the Historic District Commission and URI presently don't have representation on that committee because the person from URI and the person from Historic District Commission both resigned from their Jim Garfield and Vern Wyman both retired. So right now, if you're just doing re-interviews of that committee, you'll miss those two key players in this conversation. The Historic District Commission and URI don't have a representative that you'll see for interviews because they retired. Mm-hmm. So there'd be, especially for Historic District Commission, to have a seat at that table too would be really important.
I'm a little confused. Who called the meetings of this committee?
They seem to be...
From what I'm hearing from you, the state called the meetings? Is there a chair of this committee?
I believe it was...
How did this work?
I believe it was DOT that set the agendas and called the meetings, and we would get a letter saying, we're meeting next Tuesday, come on down to town hall. We met here. But I believe it was DOT that called those meetings and set the agenda. Oh, sorry.
I can answer that.
Okay.
So the planning director for the town has always been the chair, and once the project originally made it into the state tip, design started, and then we started having, it was probably monthly meetings initially, and then of course they'd hit a time where it took a little more time to get some updated designs out. Sometimes they were quarterly meetings, but the planning director has been the chair historically, and they coordinated the meetings with the project area committee.
So the design of this project was completed, is that?
To about 75%, to the environmental submittal point. And then it stopped, from what I understand, at that point. It hasn't...
We've been on hold ever since.
It's been on hold ever since.
It has not met.
Other than the bridge got carved out because the bridge was deficient. And
now we're hoping that we're back in the queue.
Well, we need to... Again, we've asked RIDOT to get back in the queue. To date, that has not happened.
So that's where our first efforts need to be
correct.
Directed, is to the state, through whatever method we can find, representatives, senators, every voice in the room writing letters to say what the heck.
We want to get
20 years
to restart the project, and I think the first order of business would be to have the PAC meet with RIDOT staff, just to recap where we are and where we need to go.
So I like an action item. So that seems to be the first step here, and then we can address the committee's makeup. Ms. Axelrod is telling us who's lacking. We can address that. But first we need RIDOT to say, yep, it's back up on top of the file.
And it is in the tip, I believe. Phase 1 is in for, I think, 2022, 2023. But, if we want to accelerate that, we can make that request. Whether they honor or not, it's a different story. And I think it's multi-funded over, Phase 1's funded, I believe, over 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Just very quick. All right, so the initial earmark was from Senator Chafee for $15 million. About 10 years into the project, we asked for an accounting of what do we still have $15 million? And I think they came back and said we only had 11 million something or other. So we, of course, wanted to know where the money went, but they couldn't answer that one. All right, today's the hill. From Upper College Road to the bottom of the hill, the drainage today is awful. Every time we have like a giant rainstorm, it washes out both sides of the road. The drainage that's there right now is so old that the corrugated pipes have rusted through. And there's open pits along the side of the road on the south side, and a couple of those drainage things actually dump water onto private land. All right, we were told also that we were going to get brick sidewalks wherever they needed to fix the sidewalks, the brick sidewalks to match the ones in the village now. That we were going to get period lighting. And Mr. Bennett said, the first head of the group from RIDOT back around 20 years ago, this is what he told the committee. He said, once this project is over, this is like, the DOT looks at this like a 50-year project. So once this is over, you won't see the DOT back in Kingston for another 50 years. So that's why we need to get this thing right this time.
Thank you. Yes.
So my motion would be to direct staff to reach out to our state reps and the senators and anyone else you may think for them to contact DOT to see if we can't jumpstart this program again.
I'll second.
So moved. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Oh, go on.
So can we have the planning director, if they are the chair, convene a meeting, maybe, and bring everybody up to speed, like within the next 90 days, so that they have at least met and sort of have some sort of consensus efforts to go forward? Otherwise, they're 10 separate people all operating separately. If they haven't met in 10 years, shouldn't they meet one time?
I really don't know if it's the planning director's authority to call a meeting. I mean, as a chair, you would think it would be, but I don't know. Terry, do you?
It may be helpful if the town, if we reach out to DOT first and say, we want to call a meeting of this committee and DOT needs to be at the table. That may or may not work, but if it doesn't, then of course we will be seeking our legislators to have our voice at the state level.
Terry, maybe in the meantime we could, if we have contact information, some of these, I'm sure we must have home addresses. We might not have emails for all the people on this committee. If we could just let them know that it's back on the radar, the committee has been discussed at council level, and we're looking to give them an update on the project's status as soon as we can.
Certainly.
Just so the members of this committee are aware that we're aware of their existence, I guess, more than anything.
We can do that.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to comments from interested citizens. So first come, first serve. Please just state your name for the record and, have at it. Oh, yes, we do have a 5-minute speaking limit.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Schwab, and my husband and I have lived at 61 Matunic Schoolhouse Road, which is the old Matunic Schoolhouse abutting the firehouse, for the past 12 years. I'm a registered landscape architect with over 35 years of community planning, sustainable design, and project construction experience. I understand the need for well-designed, high-density development in suitable land use areas. This 3/4-acre site is not an appropriate location for a high-density, high-intensity emergency services complex, much less a doubling of the density already present at this volunteer firehouse site, enabled only through non-conforming pre-existing conditions provisions made over 40 years ago. The applicant cannot accommodate the bare bones requirements of the GI, government institutional zone, without resorting to zero lot line setbacks and unlimited coverage of the lot, and the need for significant waivers of basic parking, driveway width, and landscape buffer requirements. We appreciate the town council's asking informed questions regarding the decision to negotiate a lease for a town EMT station at the firehouse site at your last meeting. Further issues and confusion arose following the subsequent planning board hearing on October 26th, where, as you've heard, a great deal of time was spent on the board clarifying with town staff what they can and cannot do in the hearing, or even what they were being asked to approve, after being presented with a hastily revised EMS firehouse plan and an alternative plan with only the firehouse. Essentially, what we heard is that the planning board could not make any recommendations on whether this is a good plan, a good site, overbuilt, or a good use of taxpayer funds. They can't decide if it fits with the town plan. All they can or need to do is decide if the waivers requested are reasonable. Apparently, the Planning Board then cleared the way to move forward with their consideration of these waivers based on the new slightly revised plan, which we have only seen on the screen, based not on data but on trust and hope. We're left worrying that no one is willing to ask and answer the big question, is this a good long-term investment and in the best interest of the town, as has been discussed by you already tonight? To be clear, we are 100% behind the firehouse getting redone in the approximate existing footprint. We've been hearing about that for years, so we were very surprised when we heard about the EMS station suddenly being considered there. We also support the expansion of EMT service to our community. We purchased our property knowing full well it had a volunteer firehouse next door with its associated spot zoning, and could not be expected to have known or imagined that the town would use this isolated, constricted site to build a municipal facility. This should not be viewed as a decision about life versus backup beepers. There are very likely much better site alternatives for the needed EMS use, but this plan asks us simply to trust that this is a necessary exploitation of this one site. In fact, one of the supporters of the project who spoke at the Planning Board meeting stated that we should exploit every square inch of this and any property we have in town, regardless of context. The Planning and Zoning Boards granting approvals of significant waivers and variances that they would never grant to private citizens would be evidence of such unchecked exploitation. If exploitation is driving planning decisions for the town's facilities, it's a sad day for our town. Town officials have indicated that they feel pressured because they hear people saying that talking against putting an EMT station here is like saying you want someone to die. We feel the same. We've been ridiculed and pressured for raising these questions. We are honestly just trying to be good citizens and have been more than willing to make reasonable compromise, just as you all are trying to do the best you can, too. Chief Stanley himself has said repeatedly that the site is not ideal and is tight, and also that we will soon need multiple vehicles in this area of town. So does it make long-term sense to spend $1 million on a bad lot in a bad location with no chance of being expanded in the future? We can find no mention, much less recommendations for expanded EMS service in our brand new town comprehensive plan. Shouldn't we expect that this would at least have surfaced in that plan? We hope you will reevaluate your decision given the obvious rising concern over plans that for the first time this fall have been shared with the community. Both members of the public and town officials have voiced questions that should be answered through the provision of complete data, a real site alternatives analysis, a compiled EMS needs assessment, environmental impact, and traffic studies. Please consider a limited amount of time and a transparent process to address the many unanswered questions. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rich Schwab, and I also live at the old schoolhouse. I always follow my wife, and I'm not going to repeat what she says because it's late, and we've got a lot of folks here that want to share their views. And let me start by thanking you and thanking everybody. We all want the same thing. I'm a heart attack survivor. I want an EMT station down there. I've been very blessed. We're one of the few people who moved into Rhode Island and not Florida to retire because we love Matunic. We don't want this to be adversarial. We want to work together, and I think in a way our town needs to step back. We don't need to go back through the whole school issue, and I mean we have a chance to work together, and that's our goal. So I don't think there are any villains here. Chief Stanley and Pinch and our town council are trying to do the best we can. We're trying to make really the best decision we can. But I think we need to make a decision that looks to the future. And I don't think we're not villains or NIMBYs, as I've heard, because we're just asking good questions. And I think if we all think together, we can figure this out. So, first thing, This is a dangerous place to put a station that I'm hearing anywhere from 10 to 18 to 24 calls a day. I'm hearing all these different numbers. If you, I love to sit on my front porch and talk to my neighbors. In the summer, I've said hello to Gina Raimondo and her kids riding on bicycles. Nobody uses that area for bikes and recreation more than the bike path. This is like putting an emergency station that crosses the bike path. And you're doing it on 3/4 of an acre where everything else around it is 5-acre zones. So the rest of us have to play by the rules where we have 20-foot setbacks and only 20% maximum coverage of a lot. This plan is covering, they reduced it from 80% to 65% of this lot will be either paved or built on. Shouldn't the town lead in environmental issues and sustainability issues and set a standard and not look to kind of backdoor in to get a station in? Chief Stanley, everybody here has said this is not a good site, and the only justification we hear is it's cheap. Well, I don't think we should be cheap with investing in our future, in our emergency services especially. And I have to tell you, I love our volunteers. We had great relationships for 12 years next door. I greatly appreciate what they do, and we have no problem with helping them and working with them so they can get their firehouse redone, even though it's on a non-conforming lot to start with, and they're going to add a third to it. So we have the safety issue. If you put an EMT vehicle 18 to 24 out on that street, it's a call for disaster. Come to our neighborhood between 8 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock, and the cars are lined up to the old schoolhouse down to the stop sign where parents are leaving their kids off. If there's 18 to 24 calls a day where that EMT station is coming from the back lot to the front, don't you think it's a disaster waiting to happen? I also think this was sold to us originally, and many of the people in here didn't know about this. I mean, it's been amazing, and we've only had this information for a month. And look at the people who are staying here till 9 o'clock tonight, waiting everybody to go through just to voice their opinion. And they're not NIMBYs. These are folks from across town. They include doctors and EMT specialists, and I encourage you to look at your letters, and we've just started. So I've always been somebody who says, don't come to me with a bunch of problems with no solutions. I think there's a chance for solutions. And if I didn't say this earlier, I want to tell you that I want to give a big shout out to our town manager, Murphy, and planners Rabbit and Wagner. They took time to come out and talk with us. This is the first time we've been responded to. We asked questions and got no responses prior to this. But there are a few people who took the time to come out and actually look at the site. You need to actually look at the site and walk it. It doesn't work if you just drive by. I think you really need to feel it. So I think we plan for what we're asking, I think this is a way for everybody out. We got a new town manager, we got a new town planner, we've got $9 million in new money. Can we hit the stop button on the negotiation where we all know this is a bad site and we've all admitted it, and let's look for a site that's appropriate. We all agree it needs to be close to Route 1. Actively look, including advertising, and if we need statutory changes to allow buildings on land held like entities like the Land Trust, which are great neighbors. And I think some of the people who gave the land would roll over in their grave if they were coming down Matunic Beach Road and they looked across Perry Razzo's field and saw the drive-through equivalent of a drive-through McDonald's that's paved over with the whole lot being paved with parking lots like a strip mall. I mean, they'd roll over. That's not where they gave the money to the Land Trust. We need to do a good job to protect our land like our forefathers did. So, my time up?
Yeah, if you just had one final sentence or something.
I was just going to say that stop the plan, and for now, try to find a better piece of land, use some of the $9 million to see what we can do to do the right space and do it right once, at least for the next 20 years. Let's consider hiring an outside consulting company, not with the UFD interest, not with our neighborhood interest, somebody to come and maybe be an independent voice during this time period and say, what are our actual fire and what are our fire needs and what are our safety needs? We haven't done this. Yet we just are doing what we did 130 years ago by putting fire stations in the same place we had them when we were farming the fields and spending $2 million on that. Well, that's a UFD, I understand, but this is a town project now. This is not a fire district project. This is a town project within the fire district. We can do better as a town. We should lead the way in a new environment. We should lead the way in inclusive and not planning behind the scenes. So I'm sorry if it takes so long. I promised I would be quick. And I think a special task force of health and safety professionals and people from the community to work together where we can have an organic plan that everybody's going to buy into and want to get behind. Thank you. Sorry it took so long.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike McKenna. I've been in Matunic most all my life, and I want to ask first about public safety. Have there been any traffic studies done on this property or on this whole concept? And two, I love Matunic School. There's a big lot in front of that. That could be a perfect public safety complex for Matunic, for South Kingston. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. My name is Rick Rhodes. And as I watch what's going on tonight, this is the beauty of the democracy. And that is, here it is, you get to listen to us. And so what I wanted to do is to share that the proposal to co-site both the fire apparatus and the EMS station on Matunic Schoolhouse Road is it's fundamentally flawed. Trust and hope is not a strategic plan. To place both capacities on that site requires a raft of variances and setbacks. It doesn't conform with surrounding properties. There's no data that we've seen yet that supports placing it there. And most importantly, and what we've heard tonight, is it might well be obsolete prior to the time that it even opens. I'm a 40-year taxpayer in South Kingstown. Not 40 years old, 40-year taxpayer. And I seek the wise stewardship of the funds that we provide to the town. I support the Union Fire District, and I certainly support EMS and their commitment to our public safety. I don't support the proposal to co-site both at Matunic Schoolhouse Road. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tom Gilchrist. My wife Bridget and I live at 1050 Matunic Beach Road next to Mike. We came here tonight to support the Schwab's position, and I really appreciated Councilwoman Bergner's comments, and I think we're starting to head in the right direction, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I was going to read a much longer thing, but forget it. So my name is Fred Rubin. I live on Blackberry Hill Drive. I've had that home for 19 years. First boarding house in South County, by the way, and built in 1820. I'm a retired cardiologist. I've worked with EMS my whole life. I have huge respect for these guys. And for my own personal well-being, I really want an EMS station, very close to me, because if I go down, I want somebody there within 4 minutes. But it really is the wrong place. And I think that somebody has to just go and walk down exactly as Rich Schwab said. We have people coming in and out of this town constantly all year round, particularly during the summer. If you go down Matunic Schoolhouse Road, there are walkers, bikers, women with strollers. There's no shoulder. If you go out of that station and you take a right, you can't even see the top of the hill. These guys come blasting out, which is something that they have to do. It's simply dangerous. I took a walk there today. There's people, you always have people on the road talking, because there's no place else to go. And I just can't imagine an ambulance barreling down. On the other hand, if you cut left, you then get to the corner. You have Matunic Beach Road, which is, often gets very, very crowded. I want to remind everybody of the people who are on that road. So first of all, you have the school. You have women with their children, obviously men with their children. But you also have a lot of people coming out of the Ocean Mist and the pub. And we all know the motorcycles, they're going up and down that area. And I go biking there constantly. If an ambulance starts barreling down that street, and they're pushing everybody over to the right. This is not the crowd that you want to be dealing with, after they just stepped out of the pub and the Ocean Mist. And we're all there with our bikes and walking, and God only knows what's going to happen. I just think that it's a very, very dangerous place. Thank you, by the way, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what my husband says, and I'm taking it from a pediatrician's perspective, and we put so much of our efforts into safe neighborhoods and injury prevention, and I think about when I'm biking down Matunic Beach Road and there's a crest of a hill, and I see mothers and fathers with their young children biking there, and when I heard about this, I get really concerned.
Can I just ask you to state your name for the record?
Karen Rubin.
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Christian Mundy. I live on 216 Osprey Road. I also want to thank you for all you're doing, all your listening, and consideration of what we're saying. I support everything my neighbors say about the safety of Matunic Schoolhouse Road and Matunic Beach Road, the volume of the pedestrians and the school children and such. But I also like to think outside the box, and I like to push the envelope. And as Chief Stanley said, there's two problems there. There's a volume problem, and there's a response time problem. And I guess the way I feel about it, you took, I don't remember the name of it, but the safety complex there in front of the hospital, you took it from an 8 or 10-hour shift to a 24-hour shift. And that's awesome. But I also see the fact that you have 18 months to go, or longer, before you have a building. Doesn't life deserve to be saved a little bit faster than that? Isn't there a plan to think outside the box and get the ambulances and start having a better volume capability that is going to also drive faster response times? In the last planning meeting, the data was requested. Another citizen asked for the data and said, show me where this is going. Show me where the calls are. Is it Green Hill? Is it Matunic? Is it Tuckertown? And I think the estimate was 40%, which I trust the professionals. Councilwoman Kelso, as you've told me to do, trust their opinions, and I do, and I thank you for that guidance. But I want to say, how can we challenge ourselves to drive a better legacy, not only for yourselves, but also for Chief Stanley? How can we get the ambulances faster? What can we do to accommodate those EMTs? When did you guys first start doing Zoom meetings? Did you always do Zoom meetings? Did you always include people in from remotely? When did that first start happening? So something changed. You did something different to accommodate the times. 2 years ago, my wife and I couldn't work from home, but now it's almost a natural occurrence. Because of a pandemic, people are working from home. More and more people, they just had a G20 summit to save the environment. One of the things that's going to do that is for people to stop driving all the time. I don't want to get off topic, but what I want to say is, let's think outside the box. Let's do something to interact faster. And what's going to do that is the ambulances and the EMTs. From there, let's find the right place to put it. As you've said, you have an infusion of cash. As the RIDOT team, planning team said, they had $15 million, and then, poop, they had 11. So money tends to disappear and not show up. When I first moved to Connecticut in 1995, Connecticut had a $300 million excess because of these casinos. And then poof, it disappeared. I mean, did they spend it on things that save lives? I have no idea. But here's a chance where you guys have to save lives and build a greater legacy for the town, yourselves, and Chief Stanley. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not speaking on this subject, but I just want to ask a question of the council. Okay, many times I've come to this chamber, when the 5-minute mark hits, you tell me to go sit down because you have other people to talk. You've let people here tonight yak, yak, yak beyond the 5-minute mark, and you would tell me on those other nights to come back up after everybody else has spoken. So, if that's, you can't have it both ways, right?
Thank you, Norm.
Hi, my name's David Styler. My wife Carol and I live at 205 Osprey Road. I would have been up here a little quicker, but I'm a little older right now. So I just want to build on something Christian said, but I want to first start with just saying Chief Stanley is in a really difficult position. I know in his heart he wants to do the best thing for the town. He wants to have ambulance coverage for the whole area, and he's working his hardest to get this done. We want to try to help. One of the things that has been mentioned, and Chief Stanley talked about it tonight, is quick access to Route 1. The current site is not going to give him quick access to Route 1. Chief Stanley also mentioned in a prior meeting that he had looked for available parcels of land. And I did a Zillow check and a Trulia check. There's not a whole lot of land for sale right adjacent to Route 1. So he's totally correct with that. But one of the things we've been saying, and you've heard it tonight, look outside of the box, look at other parcels of land. Maybe there's a possibility of looking at land that is vacant right now, and whoever from the town or whatever contact the landowners and seeing if they would be willing to sell the property to the town. That would be a tremendous location to give quick access, quick response time, and all the things that we really need in the town. My wife and I had a friend of ours over. She's a realtor today, and she was just looking up on the computer. She did some printouts for us of parcels of land that are adjacent to Route 1. But she only did it for maybe a half an hour, so it wasn't a real extensive study. And there are parcels of land there that are vacant. They're not in residential areas that also are adjacent not only to Route 1, but turnaround so that you could cover all areas of the town. And that is something we would really like the town council to consider. You've heard all the arguments about safety, about location and size and the variances, all right? Maybe it's time to put that behind us and move forward and look at location and try to do an extensive study of vacant land. To give Chief Stanley, all right, the availability of putting a station on there that could be expanded in the future if he needs to, and will give him the quick access and quick response time that he needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim Tollikin. I've been a homeowner on the Slope Avenue in the Green Hill section for 28 years. My wife and I have been full-time residents since 2016. My comments tonight are, take a look at the project narrative that was prepared by JCE Engineering, and you would read in that why there is no way that the site on Matunic Schoolhouse Road should include an EMS facility. EMS is so important to any community, and it should be in South Kingston. We need more EMS. The chief is great. He knows what he needs, and he knows what he needs for all of us. But South Kingston, this is what the EMS, this is what the project narrative report paid for, that you guys are probably going to have to pay for some of it if EMS goes away, says. It says, because it's a public safety building, rules don't apply. It says, it's mostly saying that the planning board, the zoning board, and even the town council can't and won't be able to follow any of the basic rules if an EMS facility is included in the Matunic site. It goes on to say, it shouldn't be a phrase like, given the awkward and tight geometry of the site, or a statement saying, oh, the mature trees at the adjacent residential property will be maintained, quote, to the maximum extent possible. Or, and certainly to say, the new EMS facility narrative says, before construction starts, given this is a public safety facility, the design generally does not meet the requirements of the South Kingston Land Development Regulations. What more do you have to hear in a report commissioned by the fire district for why a facility that is housing something so important should not be there? Public safety facility should be a source of pride for all of us. And it should be a best-in-class facility. Let's rebuild the firehouse on Matunic Schoolhouse Road. Let's go identify a proper first-class site for a much-needed EMS facility in a location that doesn't require waivers, variances, and additional allowances. It's important business, and we shouldn't settle for anything less. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Iredale, Hunt Avenue, Wakefield. I've been following this either on the computer or here for quite a bit of time. It appears to me that Chief Stanley has taken the UFD option as an easy way out. I don't think a full land search has taken place, but I have one suggestion for the council. Clark Farm is on the south side of Route 1. Route 1 at that point travels east and west. Their portion of property on their northwest side of their property is used for junk. They store rocks, tree stumps, everything you can think of gets pushed up in that corner. It abuts Mediterranean Avenue. Route 1 is a limited access highway. If the town was to choose property on Route 1, they would have to get federal government approval for access on Route 1. With the Clark Farm location, they already have it. Mediterranean Avenue is right there. If you go on that road and go to the right, there are residences. If you go on that road and go to the left, there's about a 200-foot section of paved road that goes right into Clark Farm's property. It's only my suggestion that the town look at Clark Farm because it's on Route 1. It's in the area of all the turnarounds. It has access directly to the highway. Issue number 2, very briefly. We're speaking with some residents of the town with our tropical storms that we've had in the past. There's been a lot of tree damage that takes down power lines. Other people and myself feel that the town council should put a little pressure on our tree warden to be a little more aggressive checking town trees, because it is some of the town trees that are taking down the power lines. If he was a little more aggressive removing some of these trees, we might not have the electric issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Laudati. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak on this issue. I would just like to reiterate a couple of things that I've said in the past. This plan could possibly result in the fire truck that has been there every day for the past 43 years to be absent for 8 months. If the current station is torn down, it will take 8 months to build a new one. Also, it's kind of alarming to me that this thing seems to be going in the direction of 2 separate buildings. And I see no need or justification to build 2 separate buildings. What's good for EMS is good for fire. What's good for fire is good for EMS. Everywhere in the state, fire trucks and EMS apparatus are housed together. I object as a taxpayer to be asked to pay for 2 separate buildings. There's no need of it. We need to try to work together more than we are now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments tonight?
Roberta Mulholland, Tunick Schoolhouse Road. I'm so disappointed to hear what I've heard from the council tonight about this proposal. I'm so disappointed that, in fact, you are putting things like zoning variances are granted every zoning meeting. Matunic houses have some of the most zoning variances that you can find. There's a lot of NIMBYism going on. Where the fire station is was not spot zoned. The town owned the land. It was a governmental piece of property. It was split from the Matunic Schoolhouse. The fire station was built. An ideal location, that doesn't exist. This council, the previous council, the previous council, council after council after council has failed to make sure that the southwest part of this town has EMS. Ever since this town took over EMS, we used to have a volunteer ambulance corps. That's who we get where I live. We get Charlestown, volunteer ambulance corps. Ever since we've been paying for professional EMS, which are absolutely fabulous, what are we getting? Council after council after council doing nothing. Budget meeting after budget meeting, this comes up. We don't have EMS in this part of town. If you watch the planning board, a man came up and spoke about having a heart attack, and he waited 40 minutes, a man from Green Hill. I don't understand how anyone can be concerned about the full-growth trees up against the beautiful home next to the fire station. This is an emergency building. It's a governmental entity on governmentally zoned property. If you bought the house next to it, you knew it was going to have to be enlarged, because if you've been to a parade in your life, you have noticed that fire trucks got larger and larger and larger. Saying this process hasn't been transparent is so disingenuous. It's remarkably disingenuous, because you don't pay attention to what's going on in town or in your fire district does not mean it has not been transparent. Fire district meetings are open to the public. They had their meetings by Zoom exactly like this body had their meetings by Zoom. Everybody could sit at home and watch them and figure out what was going on. This isn't new. If you just found out about it a month ago, you haven't been paying attention. I'm very disappointed that you voted 4-1 to enter into an agreement with UFD, and now you're going backwards. You're talking about what's going to be good for 2030? Are we going to wait 9 more years for EMS? Are we going to wait till 2030? What about all the people who have been paying attention and do think that this is going in? They might not have gotten all those flyers shoved into our mailboxes. This is what's new. What's new is this opposition. If you've watched the fire trucks, they don't barrel down the road. They go about 35. Matunic Schoolhouse Road is no different from almost any other road in this town, whether it's in the rural part of town or in town. Willard Avenue, there's no breakdown lane. There's no sidewalks. There are berms. It's no more narrow than Matunic Schoolhouse Road. There are plenty of curvy roads in South Kingstown. Emergency management, emergency medical services, ambulances, they go down those roads. Kingstown Road, where the Public Services Building is located. The ambulances can come out on Kingstown Road or Curtis Corner Road. Kingstown Road doesn't have sidewalks. It doesn't have breakdown lanes. If you're on a bicycle, it's a vehicle. When an emergency vehicle, whether it's a fire truck or an ambulance, comes, you stop, get off the bike, unless you're on a 3-wheeler, get off the road. This is not rocket science. This is lives. The priority cannot be beautiful homes and mature trees over lives. We have an aging population in this town. Children do not walk to school on Matunic Schoolhouse Road. It's an elementary school. It ends at grade 4. If you're a parent allowing your kindergartner through 8-year-old to walk down Matunic Schoolhouse Road alone in 2021, that's just irresponsible. I know you're going to tell me I have 5 minutes, but as Dorold said, you welcomed all these objectors to speak for as long as they wanted. Where are they going to put the fire trucks? It's a ridiculous question. Why don't we trust the experts in our town? Why don't we support Chief Stanley? Because while he was trying to find a way to service our part of town with EMS, our town council didn't do anything. Matunic Schoolhouse, the Matunic Elementary School has restrictions on it. It's for educational purposes only. Clark Farms has restrictions on it. Can't put it there. There's a lot of ideas about what you might be. Let's get a task force. Let's do this. It's, I don't want it on my road. Well, it's worked really well for fire trucks. And guess what? Fire trucks and ambulances, they have to stop for school buses. All over town, they have to stop for school buses. All over the state. We need ambulances available even near schools. I'm just really disappointed. We've been looking forward to this. A lot of people have been looking forward to this. They don't know you're doing this. You don't put it on the agenda. It's buried in the letters, correspondence. It's buried. You could at least put it on the agenda so when people look, they go to new business, because that's what we do. We go to new business. What's new? We don't read through 2 or 3 pages of correspondence. And if I sound angry, I am. Because people have been in this town their whole lives. I've been in this town my whole life. We are spending money for consultants here, there. We are just, you're spending as much money as you've ever spent, and you're still not supporting 100%. I would like to hear 100% support for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm back again. Talking about my chickens. Jessica Mayhew, and I'm over on Pershing Ave. I read your ordinance. Thank God you finally realized something for SK. But I'm going to ask some questions because, I found out over the weekend, super cool, I'm not the only chicken person in my neighborhood. Your ACOs aren't trained for livestock. So if, in fact, what happened with one of my chickens, because I have small children, the kids left the gate open and one of mine quite literally crossed the road and went to my neighbor's house, and she promptly brought it back because mine's got a little state-issued ID bracelet on it because I do state testing. It's totally voluntary. But my point is your ACOs aren't trained for livestock, so how do we know? How are they going to actually know where these birds originate? It's not like a dog license. And even if you do participate in the state voluntary testing, those numbers actually don't go anywhere. Unlike with larger livestock where they get the USDA issued tag and that gets entered into a state and federal system, the poultry tag goes nowhere. It's literally on a piece of paper that DEM stores up in a file. But you couldn't call them and say, hey, this bird got picked up in South Kingstown, ID bracelet, blah, 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 blah. No one's going to find that information. Because I asked, actually, the state vet when they came to do my testing, I said, where is this information stored? They're like, no one actually uses this. But it's literally so I can take my birds out of state so my kids can show. We're going to a show in Massachusetts in a week and a half because that's what we do. So that's something to bear in mind because, I'm really excited about the idea of keeping your birds together on your own property. That's nice. I don't want any, what makes me really sad when people can't be responsible poultry owners. And maybe there should be some more education components. I know people like the word free range, and it's like, woohoo, free range. USDA says free range just means contained in a space. That doesn't actually literally mean no boundaries. It means contained in a box. Or if you want to fence in a space, that's free range. So I'm happy to see that you guys are doing something specific for SK. But my other concern is, do I have any assurances that you guys are not going to see me in a year because someone's complaining about flock sizes or someone's going to be complaining about my roosters? I want some assurances that this is it and we're going to leave the rest of the animals alone. I love coming to visit, but at the same time, I'm a busy mom. And, my little guy, he's like, Mommy, are you going to another meeting to make sure they don't take my chickens? I said, yes, Mommy's going to another meeting to make sure no one's messing with your birds. Because at 4, that's his concern is that Barbie might not be allowed to stay. Barbie's looking for a husband named Ken because they want to hatch chicks, but that's a whole other story for another time. But they know that this is happening because they see me get riled up because I don't want anything to happen. So I want some assurance that you guys are not going to see me in a year because someone's complaining about roosters or someone's complaining that, this person has too many birds in this type of space. If it's that kind of thing, direct them to SPCA. The ACOs, I'm sorry, I've talked to them. They ask me for help because they're like, we're not trained for animals like this. We don't know what to do. And then I'm like, well, guys, I can try to help you, but that's not really my job. That you guys are employees of the town. And, well, here's me asking you, provide them with just a little bit more support. If you are going to start making rules like this, they need support in what looks like in livestock safety, in how to judge an appropriate pen space. They need that training because you're going to feed them to the wolves to be the ones to go and knock on their person's door saying, hey guys, your chickens are running around and I don't see an adequate pen space, and they need some type of concrete education. You can't just send someone to do a job that they're not necessarily trained in that department for. Just some food for thought, but thank you for keeping everything out of it and just keeping it contained to, your personal space. That makes me feel like good chicken mom. And on that note, my kids have school tomorrow.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comments tonight? Any comments at the council table? Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm looking forward to another parade in town. It's been a while. There will be one for Veterans Day on Thursday, so hopefully I'll see you out there on Main Street and can celebrate our veterans. All right, town manager's report.
Thank you very much. I'll keep this brief. A couple of items on my report. One is a memo with regard to the status of the town's American Rescue Plan funds. You will notice that the town did go out to bid for consulting services for management and project management services for the bulk of the funds. We are reviewing those proposals currently and hope to have something, if not at the next meeting, the following meeting for a recommendation. We have I've noted the vaccine clinics on the town manager's report for anyone who is interested, and those are for either booster shots or first-time vaccinations for ages 12 and up. And also the school department is in the process of scheduling vaccination clinics for the 5 to 12-year-old population. Chief Stanley is working with them along with GOH to see that happen, and those will be scheduled at the South Road School site. Excuse me. A couple of items that are not on here. We did, and the council may have gotten this information, but it just came this evening, early evening, is the South Kingstown Housing Authority Executive Director, Laura Lee Costello, has sent out an invitation inviting the council to attend a ribbon cutting and grand opening for the laundry facility at Champaign Heights, which has been a long time coming. They're thrilled to be able to have a date set for November 22nd. If you haven't received that, that will be forwarded to you within the day. So that's good news. And what else? I think, unless the council has any questions, that is my manager's report.
Any questions for Terry? Right. Very good. On to the town solicitor's report.
Just a couple items I'd like to discuss. The first one is the update on the town manager's search. As you are aware, this is the subject of a new business item coming up with advertisements. But basically, the reason this is here is just to really let the public know what's going on. You did have a work session with Municipal Resources, Inc., the consultant that you hired to assist you with finding the best match for a new manager here in South Kingstown. You spoke about a timetable. It's going to basically begin with an advertisement, which you're going to vote on a little later in the meeting. That'll be placed beginning November 17th. It will run through December 20th. Applications will be accepted through January 3rd. So that gives the public a little bit of a timeline on what we're looking for in terms of having applications come in. Following that, there'll be a full-fledged process, and that process is going to involve vetting by your consultant, vetting by you, the opportunity for the public to also present their thoughts to the council with regard to what they're looking for in a new manager. You may also be including entities in town that have a direct interest in the town manager that will also participate. But basically, the process is underway. Looking forward to working through that process, and we will ultimately, hopefully by the beginning of next year, have a new manager in place. I don't know if there's any specific questions, but again, you will be voting on the contents of the advertisement coming up. Very good.
So the advertisement, one of the things I had a question, is in the charter that they need to be a resident within 6 months of appointment? I'm only concerned that it's been a challenge to find housing, affordable housing, houses, blah, 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 that we put that restriction into the job, and then what if they don't find something?
Yeah. So that is a challenge, agreed, and what has happened in the past is you don't necessarily have to own a place in town to be a resident. Obviously, you can be a tenant you can rent, and there is every individual who applies to this position knows about that up front, so they have to have in their mind that, hey, within 6 months of my appointment, I'm going to have to find a place here in town. As I say, it could be even renting a place somewhere. So, good question, but I think there are ways to deal with it. And as you know, only the electors of the town can change the charter, so.
So on to item B, I suppose.
Okay, so chickens and someone from public comment got up, and let me begin by assuring, she's not here anymore, but the public, that what I've put in front of you for consideration this evening to consider for an order of advertisement at a subsequent meeting does not in any way regulate how many animals you get to keep, whether they make noise like roosters. It says nothing about keeping them in pens or how to contain them. Absolutely nothing like that is being proposed. The issue that has been brought to you by residents of the town are the issues of animals that stray from someone else's property onto either private or public property and cause a nuisance, do damage, etc. So the ordinance that I put together based upon a number of ordinances that we looked at, but primarily zeroing in on what the issue is here in South Kingstown. It's animals that leave the property, no matter how big or small, because that doesn't matter. Whether it's a large farm or if it's someone's backyard house, what this ordinance would do is basically state that if your animals stray over your property line and wind up somewhere else, at that point the town would be able to take action. That action would be the animal control officer or police officer would basically be able to impound the animal, bring them to a facility, and in order to get the animal back, the owner would have to basically pay for the cost of the upkeep of the animal. And there are some proposed fines. And you know, as I'm reading it tonight, we could always make the first a warning instead of a fine. I mean, we can work with this. And the other thing that I think is really important, like any ordinance or any law enforcement is going to be practical about this. I don't think anyone has to worry about the fact that if a chicken winds up somewhere that something bad is going to happen. This ordinance is clearly directed at instances which are happening on multiple occasions over and over and over again and causing harm to neighbors. That's what this is directed at. So, again, this is just here for general discussion tonight. This or something very similar would have to be set down, say, on your November 22nd meeting for an order of advertisement, and then it would be considered at a December meeting.
So one thing that our speaker raised was just sort of the training of our animal control officer to be able to manage this. So there is going to be a burden created by this ordinance on our town staff. I know that's going to be hard to contemplate, I think, in the ordinance itself, but it's something for us to think about as we contemplate passing it. I don't know if there's a way for us to sort of get a handle on what that burden might be for when we're considering the ordinance itself.
Sure. If you do want to consider it in a formal way, I can certainly make contact with the chief and the ACO and find out what that would be. You know, my other thought is that this is not an issue which is popping up everywhere in town and is going to need to take oodles and oodles of hours of time of our law enforcement officials to deal with. At least that's not what my perception is of the problem. Having said that, of course, I wouldn't even know. Do you chase a chicken with a net? Right? So practical things like that need to be dealt with.
Once you have them by the legs, they just sort of hang there. But maybe that's not the healthiest way to do it. All right, so do we want to ask that this be put on a coming agenda for order of notice?
I do. I think this is a tool in the toolbox, so when we get the egregious situations, we have something to act on. And I agree with you, Mike. This is not something, where the animal control officer every day is going to be wrangling chickens, right? This is when we have the big issues. Right now, we don't have any way to address the big issues. This will give us the tool to address the big issues.
All right, and would you need a motion from us in order to? Yes.
It would be a motion to ask that the order of notice be placed on the next council agenda.
I move. Second.
Moved. Any further discussion? All right. Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. And that brings us, that's it for the town solicitor's report, Mike. All right, to appointments, item 12.
I move that we appoint Susan Axelrod, Gail Ferris, and Doral Beasley. We reappoint them to the 138 Project Committee. Yeah, Project Reconstruction Committee.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. There were two new names for the...
Second.
Moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously as well. That does bring us to new business. 13B is a resolution authorizing a joint award of bid to Morton Salt of Chicago, Illinois for winter road salt at a unit price of $68.42 per ton, delivered for FY 21-22. An award of bid to Eastern Salt of Lowell, Mass. For winter road salt at a unit price of $67 per ton, delivered for FY 21-22. Further described in a memo from the Public Services Director to the interim town manager dated November 1st.
Motion to approve item 13B.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 13D, a resolution extending the town's declaration of emergency adopted at an emergency session on March 15th, 2020, subsequently renewed on April 13th, May 11th, June 8th, July 13th, August 11th, September 14th, October 13th, November 9th, December 14th of 2020, and then January 11th, January 25th, February 22nd, March 22nd, April 26th, May 24th, June 28th, July 26th, August 10th, September 13th, October 25th of 2021.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 13D.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 13E, a resolution authorizing the advertisement of recruitment of a new town manager by Municipal Resources, Inc.
So you have a proposed advertisement that's in front of you this evening, and if any of you have edits to it, now would be the time to do it. Basically, the one missing piece right now is the salary range. Colleen Camp did provide you with a survey of town manager salaries throughout the state, so you can get an idea of what they are. She's also advised you of what the present town manager's salary is. So I'll just start off by stating that your consultant is recommending, based upon that information, that you plug in a range of 145 to 165. That's the recommendation. It's up to you to decide.
Mike, what's the current salary of the town manager?
It's 151 or 152. It's 152. 152.7.
Did we get it? I don't see an email from Colleen with the benchmarks of other town managers. Okay. So we didn't get that.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm looking at the email now. I really thought this went to the whole council. But so since it did, again, I apologize for that. I made the mistake of assuming it went to you. I will give you some benchmarks just so you know. So the town of Barrington, 143. The town of Coventry, 150. The city of East Providence, the town of East Greenwich, 156. Jamestown, 126. Middletown, 166. Narragansett, 125. Newport, 185. North Kingstown, 132. Portsmouth, 135. Providence, 142. We know South Kingstown, that's up there at 152.7. West Warwick, 145. Westerly, 170. Those, I picked the ones that were basically 130 or so and higher. There are a number of others, obviously. They run the gamut from Central Falls, 78,000. Johnston, 75,000. Pawtucket, 97,000. Richmond, 88,000. But what I tried to do is give you numbers that I think that someone looking to be manager in South Kingstown would compare themselves to.
So what was the range again? 145 to 160?
145 to 165.
How do people feel about that range?
I just have reservations about the range, establishing a range. If someone's making 157 now and they're a wonderful candidate, are they put off by, the range not being high enough? I understand why the consultant, I asked him about it last time we advertised for this position. We wrote something about salary, competitive salary and benefits, that kind of thing. So I have reservations about stating the numbers. I don't want to put off qualified candidates who say to themselves, oh, I'm probably just better off staying where I am, right? And I think it limits us.
Okay.
And I understand his advice. His advice was people want to know what they're going to make. But I have reservations about the range.
What if we put subject to negotiation based on experience, credentials, things of that nature? Is that something you've seen, Mike?
You certainly could. You could put competitive salary, which is negotiable. Yes. I think, so of course you can do that. I think the point that the consultant was making is that you'll more quickly separate out individuals who may or may not be interested if they know up front at least what that salary. And the example he had used at the work session was if someone's in the 200 plus range, they're not going to apply, and it's because at the same time individuals know how much they're making now, and it's going to be, as you would expect, one of the first questions they're going to ask is what it is. Now, whether or not you do that afterwards, meaning after the applicants come in, or you do it up front, is really up to all of you. And any any candidate who does his or her homework is certainly going to look and see what the current salary is and may very well look at other salaries throughout Rhode Island. But
the League of Cities and Towns, this is public information.
Yes,
anybody can see this chart on the League of Cities and Towns, right? So this isn't a secret. I just don't want to tie our hands. I don't want to put off somebody who's making 160 saying, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go for it.
Well, just to push back, somebody's making 160 would see 165 in this range, and that's better. I guess the thing is, can we find a number that we're not comfortable going above? and then putting that as the top number on that range?
I don't think we can answer that question right now. So I would pause to even put a cap number. We don't know what candidates we'll get, so I pause to kind of create a cap ceiling for that at this time.
Well, here's what I would just say. I'm not a HR person myself, but I know we hired a consultant to sort of help us through this process. They recommend that we put a range out there. And I think, I don't know, I have faith that we could find some type of range potentially if we're up for it tonight. I would say, hearing those numbers, the highest in Rhode Island was 170. Is that what I heard?
185, Newport.
Was it? Or,
Australia's one.
I think the highest was Newport, and that was, I'm trying to bring it up again.
185.
It was 180, I believe. Newport was 185.
Okay.
I'll just look at the very high end. 185 for Newport, 170 for Westerly. There was a 166 was Middletown. So the 166, the 185, and the 170 are the three high ends.
and so, and then like, let's just think like in Newport, they're paying someone 185. It's a, it's a international tourist attraction. And so do we think we need that same level of manager sort of, and maybe we do, maybe we want to turn South Kingstown into Newport. But maybe not. And so do we think, where do we think our number should be? If we're really uncomfortable putting a range out there, that's okay too. But I don't know. It is the recommendation of our consultant, so I just want to play the devil's advocate here.
Our neighbor, North Kingstown, is 132,000. So we're 25,000 more than that right now. 20,000 more. So
Right.
we're a competitive salary. I don't have a problem either way.
I think it's presumed that any candidate will research what the current town manager is making, so that is presumed to be the baseline, in my mind.
Yeah, or if somebody's going to work for less, it's going to be because they come in with less experience than the prior town manager had. Theoretically, I would think. So, if we don't want that in an applicant, maybe we could set the lower limit 150, upper limit 175, something like that. Or,
I could do 150 to 180.
You could just put in the ad what the present salary is and also add that, the salary is subject to negotiation.
I like that idea.
All right. Are there any?
So yeah, I kind of like that. So we could put competitive salary and benefits, and then a sentence that says, current town manager compensation is, or is approximately. You know what I mean? Something like that. So we're not tying our hands, and we're. Again, I think anybody who's applying is right on the internet looking to see what do they make. I think it's kind of a moot point, right? Just depends on how we want to word it.
All right, so I'm hearing some support for this I'm sure they can wordsmith exactly it, but I think
Wordsmithing, you just need to vote on how you want to proceed.
Is this like a motion, or is this just something like
This is a motion.
Yeah, okay.
You need to authorize the advertisement, and as part of that authorization, how do you want to handle the compensation?
Okay. But they'll do final wordsmithing, or okay.
I think you can trust them to do the final wordsmithing.
All right. And any other items that we wanted to see added to this advertisement language?
I just had a question about the dates, just really quickly. So it's going to be advertised for 30 days ending on the 20th, but we will accept applications through the 3rd?
Correct. That's what you talked about at the work session, I believe. But again, that's subject to what you all feel is best. The ad would go in on November 17th. It would run through December 20th in all of the various venues where individuals who are seeking this job are likely to look. They know where those are. And then it will say accepting applications through January 3rd. But that's just a proposal.
I'll make a resolution authorizing the advertisement for recruitment of a new town manager with the compensation just stating competitive salary subject to negotiation. Also adding the current salary for the town manager is $152,000.7 or $152.7 thousand.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just need some clarification. So the actual advertisement says additional information, website, cover letter, and resume in confidence to this address. Deadline, 9 a.m., Monday the 20th, and MRI will accept qualified applicants until Monday the 3rd. They seem to have two deadlines in the same sentence. So I'm just confused. Because my question was, I thought the ad was going to run for 30 days, but we were going to accept applications for whatever, another 10 days or whatever we decided. But this seems to be two deadlines.
So I agree with that. I think the wording needs to say first consideration given to applications received by 9 a.m. Monday, December 20th, period. Right? Then we have MRI will accept qualified candidates until Monday, January 3rd. I think that tells people they need to get it in sooner rather than later. MRI will give those first consideration. Right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Anybody want to help me fix that?
You can say first consideration, or you can simply eliminate the 9 a.m. and just say deadline is January 3rd. In other words, the ad will run till December 20th, then it'll disappear, and with the deadline being January 3rd.
Yeah, I think that makes most sense to me.
Me too. That was what I was saying.
It gets confusing, I think.
I would agree with that. So,
I assume Rory has incorporated that into his motion.
Yes, I'd like to amend my motion to incorporate what we have just discussed here.
So the deadline will be the 3rd.
Correct.
Do we need another second?
Why not?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further clarifications need to be made? All right, is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. And let's see, where are we? Oh, here we go. That is the end of our public meeting, so thank you all for staying to the end here. We appreciate your attendance and all your input tonight. So you can't stay here for the executive session, unfortunately. We'll see you next time.
So we
Do we have to move? Don't we have to move to read the whole sentence?
We do. I need.
Motion, motion to convene in closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46, 5A2 to discuss matters pertaining to litigation, and pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A to discuss matters related to the acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes, or of the disposition of publicly held property wherein advanced public information would be detrimental to the interest of the public.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously.